печеньку у зеленому саду. Чи не вийде дівчинонька рано вранці по ладу? Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Вийшла дівчинонька рано вранці воду брать, а за нею козаченько веде коня напувать. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні. У нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Futures
Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1060 of the War News stream. And today we have very disturbing news that apparently Germany is warning of a possible Russian attack on NATO. Also, South Korea has descended into chaos, and also an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear sites is likely imminent in the coming weeks. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear today that a general inside of the German armed forces, also called the Bundeswehr, and specifically this German general from the here, has announced that the Russian Federation, according to German intelligence, is building up armed forces in significant number, far beyond the capacity needed for the Ukraine war, and is urgently warning NATO allies that it appears that the Russian Federation is preparing for an imminent conflict with the Western world due to the amount of force acquisitions that have been made by the Russian Federation in recent times. We have been able to see that NATO forces are already making small preparations for what may be coming in the future, as around to the area of Rezhal, a large amount of air defenses have been seen around this vital NATO air corridor, which continues to supply Ukraine with arms and weaponry to continue to fight the Russian Federation inside of Ukraine. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear that in the Russian Federation, the Ingles fuel depot appears to have finally stopped burning. The damage fairly significant, and it does seem that several tanks have been completely destroyed within the blaze that lasted nearly 11 days. Meanwhile, we've also been able to see that the Russian Federation is taking significant losses in the Kursk Oblast, although they are once again using fiber optic drones to somewhat higher levels of efficiency than other times seen in the war. We've also been able to see that Ukrainian armed forces have been holding the Russian Federation at bay, inflicting significant losses onto a crippled and dying army of a crippled and dying nation for the large part in its final death throes. We have also been able to see that outside the war in Ukraine, the state of Israel is now preparing for a preemptive strike on Iranian nuclear research and development facilities here in the near future. We are hearing that the trade winds within the Middle East have shifted, and it appears appears that the United States will be backing and supporting hostile actions by the West against our adversaries in the region, attempting to drive them to their knees and completely debilitate any forms of nuclear weapons programs that are being seen inside the Islamic Republic at this time. It has been stated that the United States may take an active role in these future attacks by the State of Israel, either conducting additional fire support within those missions, or will, by default, for a large part, be assisting the Israelis in preparing their plan and helping to disseminate information and intelligence to them to make sure that their strikes are as effective as possible. The Iranians have also continued to show the underground facilities near to Bandar Abbas, which they claim will ensure that the Iranian Navy is impregnable while at port, although it appears that that is no longer the case at this point, as additional information came out today. Meanwhile, inside the Republic of Korea, mass civil unrest has begun as the civil proceedings against Yoon for the declaration of martial law last year have now begun. We have been able to see that Yoon supporters are actively tearing apart courts within the city of Seoul, and we've been able to see that the police have been mobilized by city authorities and the National Assembly to deal with the rioters and to quell their civil unrest or to largely disperse the crowds. But we have a major amount of news to cover today from practically all directions around the world, really all three corners of the world that we've begun to cover at this point. But of course, the most significant amount of news that we are hearing at this time is coming from a general within the German Bundeswehr, and it appears that the Germans are warning that war is coming. According to a statement that we've been able to hear today from Major General Christian Fruding, he has stated that Germany warns that Russia is amassing forces that exceed the requirements of the current conflict in Ukraine, and he warns that Russia is creating conditions for an attack on NATO in the coming years. Of course, many will know that the Ukrainian state has dealt a significant blow to the Russian military's offensive and defensive capabilities, wiping out a large amount of armored vehicles as well as a decent amount of artillery at this point in the war. In fact, Onyx, which is still compiling statistics on the Russian Federation's visually confirmed losses, has confirmed that 20,000 individual vehicles have been lost by the Federation up to this date, including around 3,200 main battle tanks, which is a significant portion of the existing Russian main battle tank fleet that existed on paper in pre-war figures. The Russian Federation is still, however, in a very desperate situation, and one that doesn't really allow them the fortune of being able to have a perfect military or perfect wartime conditions to be able to possibly spring an attack on the West. At this moment, the Russian Federation's economy is dying. This has been known for some time now, and it has been a somewhat slower process than expected, but recently, telltale signs are beginning to show that the Russian Federation's economic systems can no longer handle the strain, including the attempt by the Russian Central Bank to seize all assets in value over $13,300 from Russian citizens' internal bank accounts and savings accounts in the Russian Federation, to continue to issue loans to major Russian companies and the Russian government to be able to keep the war running. We have also been able to hear that 2 out of the 3 major real estate developers in the Russian Federation have declared bankruptcy in the past few months, and also some major oil and gas companies, including Lukoil Gas, have also declared bankruptcy and gone under as well, causing already significant ripples within the Russian economy. That these ripples are only expected to grow far larger as time continues to progress, and the considerable strain on the Russian economy currently will continue to really compound as time continues to pass. The Russian Federation is given an option at this point. They can either try to eventually get into peace negotiations in Ukraine, or they can escalate the conflict further, possibly to the brink of nuclear war, and then try and see if the West would concede and give concessions in the face of nuclear annihilation that would destroy both sides. It appears, according to the German general that we heard from today in Berlin, the Russian Federation is going with the latter, not the former. It appears that the Russian Federation is actively building up a force sizable enough in strength that not only could they conduct offensive actions inside of Ukraine, or at least continue the meat grinder that they have going on right now, but they could possibly expand and open new fronts against NATO itself within the area of the Baltic states or around the Suwalki Gap near to Kaliningrad and the Belarusian border. This would also line up with intelligence that we have received in prior days, as we have been able to see that Belarusian armed forces near to a supposed training ground at the city of Grodno have started to construct construct trenches only 6 kilometers away from the Lithuanian border within this direction. This would generally be a sign that the Belarusian forces may be preparing preemptive defensive positions, so that way if NATO was to put them on the back foot immediately if this conventional war was to begin, they would already have pre-prepared defensive positions to fall back to and attempt a defense of Grodno from a western advance, attempting to crush any Belarusian army group that may be within that area. However, it is one thing to note that we have been hearing, at least within recent weeks and months, but this has been largely not mentioned on this channel as it didn't really have any significance until now, that there is a large number of Russian military forces that are in Kaliningrad. In fact, it's actually a shocking number, at least according to the last report that I saw around 5 days ago. It is estimated that at this point in time, there is approximately 350 to 500,000 Russian military personnel that are within the Kaliningrad Oblast at this time.
Holy moly, I didn't know that. When did that news come out? Because I haven't seen that myself.
That's actually been floated around for quite some time. According to Western sources on satellite and picture evidence, the amount of equipment and personnel that appear to be present in Kaliningrad is roughly somewhere in between 350,000 to 500,000 in size, and it has been since the latter point of 2023. It's just that now with the news being told by the Germans that it appears that they're building up sizable forces focused towards NATO directly instead of Ukraine, this number now starts to become critically important, as around 350,000 to 500,000 ground troops being inside the Kaliningrad Oblast does pose a significant threat to the Suwalki Gap, which is NATO's supply corridor for the large part in the advent of a major war, into the Baltic states, and our direct front line that will exist 50 miles away from the outskirts of St. Petersburg, the second largest city in the Russian Federation. This is something that could end up becoming quite serious, and it does appear that, at least according to German intelligence right now within the Bundeswehr, they are once again trying to raise the alarm to the entirety of NATO that it appears that the Russian Federation is preparing for an actual war-like scenario. And once again, reminding everyone that the United States is moving forward at this point, since the Russians are already going to be turning down any kind of an attempt at a peace negotiation in spring, showing that they're not willing to really peace talk their way out of the whole situation and possibly concede something. They're now going with the alternative of trying to escalate this war out of Ukraine directly towards the West, whether we are trying to make that the case or not here in America, and then try and force us to look down the barrel of the nuclear gun and choose the annihilation of the Northern Hemisphere for the large part, or some sort of concessions towards the Russian Federation. In a sort, this is largely nuclear terrorism being conducted by the Russian Federation at this point, and the conventional army is the pretty much the engine that will get them to that point. And to really quickly explain the possible Russian strategy that would be employed here, the conventional army does not stand a chance. Even with 350,000 to 500,000 soldiers inside of Kaliningrad, their offensive abilities would be short-lived and largely fleeting. The Russian Federation would not be able to break out into the Baltic Sea and actually control a naval corridor to supply the large amount of Russian forces that are inside of Kaliningrad at this time. The Russian Baltic Fleet does not possess the firepower nor the ability to be able to face down any NATO forces that would be within the Baltic, at least in terms of naval power, nor would they also be able to face down simultaneously the anti-ship batteries on shore in Sweden, the Baltic states, Poland, and also Finland, nor would they also be able to handle the large amount of air power that would be leveraged against them by the entirety of the European segment of the NATO alliance alone, firing anti-ship missiles at any vessels that would attempt to leave Königsberg and try and race out into the area of the Baltic Sea. Actually, it's not the Königsberg, it's actually Kronstadt, sorry, correction there, but nevertheless, they would not be able to break out into the Baltic and be able to create a supply corridor by sea to continue to support the offensive forces inside of Kaliningrad, meaning that this large bulk number would largely start to fade off in offensive capabilities fairly quickly. NATO would be able to blockade them practically immediately from getting any form of resupply from the Russian Federation. They would be able to create most likely a breach and a closure of the Suwalki Gap in the outbreak of a conventional war with that kind of manpower number behind them. They would be able to overwhelm Polish and Lithuanian defenders alone in the opening days of that conflict with sheer manpower and firepower initially. But as supplies would dwindle, these forces would become far less capable in combat ability, and for this reason, NATO would most likely be able to leverage sea operations as well as air-to-ground operations by our combined air forces to be able to close the land corridor that the Russians would create through the Suwalki Gap, largely once again closing off the Kaliningrad forces from any form of a resupply supply and then forcing them into largely a defensive position or a retreat back into Kaliningrad, where they would once again be closed off and the Suwalki Gap will be reopened for NATO forces and our supply corridors moving further on into the Baltic. This is something that once again is showing, however, that while the Russian Federation most likely in any kind of a conventional sense would be defeated on the battlefield, there is a far greater enemy in the background that exists, at least on the diplomatic negotiating stance, that the Russian Federation would be attempting to leverage. Once NATO forces began to defeat the Russian Federation's armed forces on the field and push them back into Belarus and also into Kaliningrad, and most likely would start to drive a spearhead offensive towards St. Petersburg, the Russian Federation would begin to state that the Western world, specifically NATO and the United States, are directly threatening the existential existence of the Russian state, which, according to their nuclear defensive doctrines, would be the justification necessary to be able to fire tactical nuclear weapons at NATO army groups on the battlefield. Once tactical nuclear weapons are used on the battlefield, we are largely expecting the negotiations would completely fall apart at that point and would never return back to any kind of a semblance of an attempt at making peace, meaning that at that point, once the first tactical nuclear weapon drops on NATO forces within this area, it would pretty much be inevitable at that point that weeks from that point, or that time, strategic nuclear weapons would be launched by the Russian Federation and the United States and the United Kingdom and France at each other, largely leveling everything within the Northern Hemisphere. That is the general fear that the Russian Federation wants to create if a conventional war was to break out, because it's either that the West decides that we will destroy the Russian Federation at all costs at that point, or they are hoping that through possibly the creation of a conventional war, they will be able to achieve some sort of major concessions inside of Ukraine, because the West would want to avoid nuclear Armageddon and the destruction of practically everything within the Northern Hemisphere. That seems to be the best logical answer I could come up with right now as to why the Russian Federation would be wanting to conduct some sort of a conventional war against NATO, or even start preparing to take that measure at some point in the future. But still, a lot of people have been saying that there's a little bit of an interesting deal going on with this, and something that a lot of people have been saying about what's going on inside of Kaliningrad at this point, and what's going on with what this German minister stated just a second ago. As Germany has warned that Russia is amassing large numbers of troops and may attack NATO, and a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this, and a load of people, there's two different beliefs right now. They're pretty much tied with what people are thinking. Either Russia is preparing for some sort of deterrence in a negotiating standpoint, or they are actually preparing for an attack on NATO to try and conduct some form of a short-term conventional war. They couldn't win a long-term conventional war, and that eventually would get them to the point of threatening nuclear weapons in a realistic scenario, which would force the West into major concessions to avoid a nuclear conflict. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so there's almost two even camps here, like you said. About 40% of the audience said Russia is preparing for deterrence reasons, while 38% said Russia is preparing for a NATO attack, and 9% said it sounds like a misunderstanding. And this is no misunderstanding. This came straight from a German general. He said that Russia's amassing way too many troops than what's needed to actually fight inside of Ukraine. And that does indicate that Russia is either trying to intimidate the United States, or they're planning on actually attacking a NATO member. So right now, that's the question we do not have answered. So my speculation on the matter would probably be that they're doing this primarily for deterrence, and if they get to the point where they're actually desperate enough, they might actually launch this attack, not because it's the logical thing to do, but instead Putin may think, I'm backed into a corner, I'm about to be destroyed anyway, let me try to take them down with me. That could be the logic behind it, because otherwise it would make no sense, because Russia is going to lose that fight unless they're willing to whip out nuclear weapons. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking here, but the amount of troops in Kaliningrad, and also this general posturing on mainland Russia toward NATO, and also Belarus digging these trenches on the Lithuanian border, these are bad signs that Russia is preparing for war. And once again, these are the signs we've been worrying and hoping were not going to pop up, but it looks like they're popping up one by one. So I'm with the 40%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it is a fairly decent tie at this point as to what the Russian Federation is trying to do. They may be trying to build up these forces, and I see some people asking, well, what about the North Koreans? I mean, they were out of manpower to the point they had to get North Koreans. And that is true. They are out of manpower in the Ukraine war, to the point that North Korean troops are filling in some areas of the Russian Federation's armed forces or front lines inside the Kursk Oblast. But at the same time, though, I always pointed out in the day today that didn't really make a lot of sense, because the North Koreans are largely sending these forces to Russia, not because Russia is completely deficient on manpower entirely, but more so that way they can use their own people as a form of currency, so that way they can get something in exchange in return from the Russian Federation. And usually that's some sort of food imports or some sort of weapons technology that would benefit the North Korean state in the long run. These troops are even lauded, the North Korean troops at least in Kursk, as completely combat ineffective by the Russians themselves, and there's been a major push to withdraw them from frontline action and to put them into more rear-line support roles, considering that they're not at all adept or prepared for the rigors or reality of a modern conflict. The Russian Federation, however, has been using these troops to, largely, I would assume at this point, take away Russian frontline fighting units that have had combat experience to possibly move them somewhere towards Kaliningrad, or maybe into a basing somewhere around the Leningrad military district within the north. Many people will also remember, and this is a fairly interesting thing as well, piecing all of this together with the information that we're hearing tonight, that the Russian Federation has created a new military district map that is completely different than ones that we saw in the past. And let me go see if I can pull up this military district map for all of y'all, because there is a new military district that has been created recently that would help with prioritizing specific instances and warlike scenarios within the northern region of Russia. And let me go and get this right here. This is the current Russian military district map, and there has been a massive change in this, at least in recent times. There was a restructuring of Russian military districts at least a little while ago, from this, which was their original military district layout, which it was incredibly complex. Around the time of 2016, in the middle of the military reforms, they reformed the districts into a new shape. And these were the 4 military districts that existed inside of the Russian Federation. There was the central military district, actually the western military district that existed in this area. This encompassed Moscow and St. Petersburg, and largely the entire major population center of the Russian Federation. There was the southern military district, which currently is actually the one responsible for conducting the war in Ukraine. There was the central military district, and then there was the eastern military district. Recently, we saw that after the military reforms were supposed to streamline the war itself and how the war was being conducted, we then saw that the Russian Federation redrew the military districts during the middle of the war last year to then recreate the Leningrad military district based around St. Petersburg. This is a fairly significant thing when we speak on a strategic level, because it's showing that they're trying to create a brand new kind of a military district, particularly to deal with Baltic border security. The central military district largely deals with surge forcing at this point, meaning that Russia's most elite troops would be based within the central military district, or the Moscow military district as it's called, and then moved to other military districts as necessary, either under the command of the southern military district for the war in Ukraine, or in a hypothetical scenario with the West, there would be surge forcing of elite combat troops from the Moscow military district to the Leningrad military district to deal with the situation on the Baltic borders and also the borders of Finland, considering that now recently became a member of NATO. That kind of action is once again showing us, at least hypothetically due to the restructuring of Russian armed forces in the middle of the war, that they are seriously considering some sort of a doctrine or a strategy to where they may engage in a limited short-term conventional war with the West. They would not be able to engage in a protracted long-term war at this point due to a complete lack of equipment. And it's also another interesting thing, though, I want to point this out, that Kaliningrad is a part of the Leningrad military district. So this military district would be responsible of pretty much every single element of the Russian Federation that would fight NATO in a hypothetical war scenario. Every single border that Russia has with a NATO country at this point is touching the Leningrad military district. And so it is showing us that that district must have been made back in 2024 because the Russian Federation was already wargaming out a scenario to where they would force a larger conventional war with NATO to try and eventually get to the negotiating table and get serious concessions, because the United States and the rest of the Western world would want to avoid a nuclear war. And Putin would largely be using the madman strategy, because what madman would ever try to fight the West knowing that they would lose? He must be crazy enough that he would use nuclear weapons, and under that kind of a philosophy, the West may be much more likely to give in to major concessions in Ukraine because they would be wanting to avoid Madman Putin and the nuclear war that could result if they continue to keep the conventional war rolling and decisively defeat the Russian Federation on the battlefield. That would largely be...
Or do you think if Putin decided to launch an attack on NATO countries, let's say he's getting really far back into a deeper corner like he is right now, and the economy starts going really sideways, even worse than it is literally right this second, and he decides to launch a ground invasion of, let's say, Estonia, Latvia, or one of these countries right here near the Baltics, then what would he be basically going for at that point? To take the country over and, do a ground invasion while simultaneously threatening to nuke the West if they intervene? What would be the strategy behind it? Because, of course, Article 5 would be invoked pretty quickly, I'd imagine, to defend those countries. So what would be the game plan, do you think?
The game plan would not be to take any territory from NATO countries. The game plan would be to use the war with NATO to get major concessions in Ukraine, because the Russians would tie it all together diplomatically to where it will be one scenario. The Russian Federation, at some point in this hypothetical scenario, is going to find something that would cross the line in their statements. And we've already seen that they've been trying to prep that kind of a statement for years at this point, really since the beginning of the war. Sanctions against Russia is just flat out war from the West. Supplying weapons to Ukraine, it's paramount to direct a war with the West, and so on and so forth. They've been doing this for a while, but what they're going to do here in the near future, if they're trying to really go down this crazy path that this German major general stated today, is that one of these things they're going to say has crossed the line, and it is a full-on conventional war, a defensive war, they'll explain, from Russia against NATO. And with that justification, they will start a war pretty much largely within the Baltics, most likely, to try and threaten the direct heart of NATO in Poland and Germany. Finland would...
But also at the same time, though, if Putin launched a ground invasion into like Estonia or Latvia or any of these countries near the Baltics, would NATO stay pretty much relegated to defending within those territories, or would they probably take offensive actions into Russia, like mainland Russia itself? Because it would seem like if Article 5 was invoked to defend those territories, then NATO would probably be very wise to actually start striking Moscow, because that means they've gone rogue at that point, and giving into concessions while they're literally using nuclear terrorism to get their way, that would not be a good strategy to go down that road. That would lead to a worse can of worms, just a year or two after the war ended.
I would agree. It would not end up well, and NATO forces would, to make this a little bit clear, would most likely start to conduct counterattacks and start driving the Russians back. Once they stabilize the defensive situation, they would start to work on a counteroffensive, and those counteroffensives would most likely break the Russian forces. Because once again, let's all put this together, because now that this German general is saying this is something that is starting to make a lot of sense. We did just cover a little while ago that reservists were being called up for military training, and it seems that the German lieutenant general, major general statements today are backing up the idea that these conscript forces are being trained to regular army standards, possibly to try and build up Russian manpower or surge it or somewhat mobilize it for a short-term war with the West. So with this in mind, what they're going to do is that they're going to move these conscripts in large numbers into this area. And once again, I have to remind everyone, the Russians most likely already understand that a long-term protracted war with the West will always end in a Russian defeat. So the plan isn't to actually beat the West in some sort of a long, drawn-out war. It's to create a war. Whether they're winning or losing is not the point. It's to create a war so that way when they start to lose, which they eventually will, and NATO forces might push into Russia, they can start to justify the use of nuclear weapons on the West, and then they go, oh, we're going to do it. If you don't try and get to the negotiating table and end this thing now, more so on our terms than y'all's, we're going to start doing it. And then that's going to force NATO to go, look, this guy is crazy. He started a war with NATO and it made no damn sense. They knew that they were going to lose. They're losing right now, and now he's threatening nuclear weapons. If he went to war with NATO, it's highly possible he could use nuclear weapons, so let's start negotiating. That is most likely...
Oh, jeez, man. If it went down that path right there, I know that they might be backed into a corner. I'm speaking about NATO. They may be backed into a hypothetical corner to negotiate their way out of it, to avoid mutual destruction. But if we did that and took the easy way out and simply gave Putin what he wanted to appease him, so that way he didn't kill all of us, that would lead to such a bad can of worms down the road. That would mean, for example, if China wanted to take Taiwan, they would use the same nuclear tactic to intimidate everybody, take it, and then literally threaten realistically to nuclear bomb foreign countries to get their way. And then you might see Iran start doing that when they eventually get their nuclear weapon. That would be, honestly, that's a tough situation. That's a catch-22. That's the situation you don't want to have to be trying to decide in a nuclear world like this. And I think that's what MAD was actually designed to prevent, was getting to that point, was make sure that we have mutually assured destruction. So I don't know if appeasement's a good way to go on that one. That could be risky.
That could be very risky. This is the situation that I think everyone in the diplomacy world is dying over right now, because anyone with any basic level of analysis, and there's a lot of people who are way better at this than Matthew and me, are seeing this coming down the pipeline at this point, from what this major general said today in Germany, and are going, there's no way to win this one, because we either try and conduct a policy of appeasement at that point once the war starts with the Russians, which means that now we're starting to lay out a precedent that nuclear blackmail does work, or we face them down literally to the point of possibly destroying the entire northern hemisphere to make a point. And we could end up all getting killed in a nuclear exchange or not at that point, but still, we have to make the choice. Are we all possibly going to get everyone killed in the northern hemisphere over this, or are we going to give major concessions and just pray that things don't spiral to turn out to be worse? And it could end up becoming a lot worse if we end up conducting a policy of appeasement, and it could end up a lot worse if we face them down and do not relent, and we actually start to beat the Russians on the battlefield and push them back into Russia. Either way, this is largely a lose-lose for everyone involved if the Russians go through with this, because who's to say that the Russians don't end up becoming a victim of nuclear blackmail from the Chinese later on down the road? Who's to say that that would not happen? And it could certainly happen. So this is something that I don't really think there is a good answer to at this point. Either one, you're dealing with a very tough end result. And once again, I do have to remind everyone that a strategic nuclear exchange, which is what the Russians will be trying to work their way towards, will end up killing most everyone in the northern hemisphere. When the nuclear weapons fall, well, when the nukes fall, most people would not be killed instantly. Well, actually, a lot would, at least numerically speaking. 30% of people would be killed practically within the first week of the nuclear bombs falling. Within the first year, it is expected that 2/3 of everyone living in the northern hemisphere in any country that had been attacked by a nuclear weapon would most likely be dead at that point. So that is what the Russians are trying to invoke the fear of, is thinking that everyone in the northern hemisphere, most everyone at least, would end up getting killed in this nuclear exchange. And
also another consideration as well. Like, I know some people are probably thinking, well, this would make it imperative, since Putin would resort to nuclear blackmail, this makes it imperative to reach a peace deal at all costs inside of Ukraine, so that way we don't actually have to get to the point of making that decision of whether or not we allow Putin to use nuclear blackmail and get away with it. So the catch with that would be, for example, let's say we go to the negotiating table inside of Ukraine and we say, okay, Putin, you can have as much of the Ukrainian territories you want that you've taken so far. You can have Crimea, you can have everything, and also Ukraine won't get into NATO. You get everything you want. Let's end it there. The reality is Putin is still going to reinvade Ukraine in a year or two after that agreement's reached. So it's going to happen again, and you're going to be right back in the same scenario unless Putin is deposed. And then if you try to depose Putin by tearing the economy down, that backs him into a corner, and that might trigger him to do something crazy and then attack NATO. So this is a tricky one right here. Like, I think the objective was not to get to this point, but a series of foreign policy decisions have sort of led us to this point, and now we're in a bit of a catch-22. All hope is not lost, by the way, but it's just a little bit tricky, and hopefully we'll be navigating this as appropriately as possible. It's very risky, and we're literally on a tightrope right now. If you fall off, we might all die. So, hopefully they got this under control, whoever's making those decisions.
And once again, we really have to lean heavily onto the U.S. nuclear doctrine, which is MAD, mutually assured destruction, to where we guarantee that pretty much, and one thing that is interesting, I do want to point this out, is that the numbers for the Russian Federation in particular are incredibly grim compared to those of the United States. The United States is an urbanized country. Most people live within a city compared to the rural countryside. But nevertheless, we have a more numerous volume of cities, and our cities are also less dense in population figures and are generally spread out over a wider area. In the event of a nuclear conflict, the United States would end up seeing approximately, and we're not speaking about the overall number of 2/3 of everyone in the Northern Hemisphere would be dead within a year. We're speaking about the particulars of the United States. The number would actually be a little bit smaller than the average. It would be around 50% of every citizen inside the United States would be dead within the first year. And most of them would survive through the second year, meaning that out of the 360 million people in this country right now, approximately 155 million of them would live through the nuclear apocalypse for the large part. So actually a somewhat significant amount compared to what a lot of people in pop culture would like to make you believe. The numbers are much more grim in Russia. It is assumed that around 70% of everyone in the Russian Federation would be killed within the first year after the bombs fell, because their country is a lot more urbanized than ours is, because of the largely the Soviet strategy during the Cold War, which was heavily urbanizing and building every single industrial center possible within major areas. So a city like Moscow, crazily enough, actually holds a whopping 10% of the entire Russian population. If you nuke Moscow, 10% of the entire Russian Federation's population is wiped out for the large part in a single mass nuclear strike. No similar thing can be done in the United States. Even hitting New York City, which has around 7 million people in it, and if we were to assume that a nuclear weapon wiped out all 7 million people, that is still only around 2% or a little bit less than 2% of the entire US population, to kind of give you all an idea of how dangerous a nuclear war really would be for the survival of the Russian citizenry, not the state, but largely the citizenry. So the numbers would be whoppingly higher for the amount of people who would end up dying in year one in the Russian Federation than it would be in the United States. The great equalizer, however, is the whole of Europe, which would most likely get nuked in this exchange by the Russian Federation. The area of Europe is generally far more population dense than you would ever see inside the United States. It's fairly normal around the rest of the world to have population dense centers. So in the area of Europe, the numbers would be fairly high and somewhat similar to the Russians, somewhere around the mean or the average of about 60% to 65% of everyone in Europe would be dead by the first year. So that is why the number globally is around 2/3 of the world's population. Well, largely 2/3 of everyone in the Northern Hemisphere would be dead within the first year, but it is different from country to country depending on certain elements. But nevertheless, that is what the Russians are trying to invoke the fear of. But the Russians also do not understand what they may be going up against here in the future. They may see that the West does not flinch, and then we force it back on them. Is the Russian Federation going to launch nuclear weapons and see that 70% of everyone in the Russian Federation is dead within that first year? Or are they going to go to the negotiating table and actually negotiate under reasonable terms, ensure a white peace or a status quo antebellum treaty with NATO, returning the borders as to what they were beforehand and also withdrawing NATO forces out of Russia? Or would they start to try and conduct a nuclear war with the West, which would largely see the Russians losing that conflict by the end of it when the last bomb fell versus the United States in terms of those who would survive? And I saw Seth Francis say, this is very morbid, but this is the reality of the situation we're dealing with. This is not, we don't have the luxury of living in a time like World War II anymore. The times of World War II died in August of 1945 when the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. From that point forward, war changed. War is not the be-all, end-all of world global conflicts or different kinds of fights or issues that arise between nations. The nuclear weapon is the ultimate decider of war. And with the nuclear weaponry, no country that is of a major significant size with nuclear weapons can ever truly win a war against another major power. It is almost always going to be assured that both sides will lose because both sides will deploy strategic nuclear weapons by the end of that conflict. Because one will be losing, they refuse to lose, so they will nuke the other, and in return, the other country will nuke them right back, largely ensuring that no one will win. So with this in mind, what this German major general is saying, he's not just saying that a war could begin on the face of Europe against NATO and Russia. He is saying that down the pipe, the Russians are going to start threatening nuclear conflict. And that is what is incredibly concerning about this. And this is what we have to understand. The Russian Federation is now going to attempt to move towards showing, Matthew, that the blend in between your plan and my plan may actually result in the Russian Federation getting to the point that they may actually possibly use nuclear weapons against Ukraine or start a conventional war with NATO. Either way,
Well, that's one of the risks of it. That's why I mentioned before. I said one of the risks is that you push Putin so far into a corner is that he lashes out. But the catch is, hopefully, this is the like bright side of things, folks. Because I see people saying, "Oh, this is like a doomer talk and things like that." No, it's not over. This is the reality of the situation. It is kind of ugly, but at the same time, though, hopefully, if this plan is implemented properly, which it sounds like the next admin is implementing the same plan that me and the enforcer were talking about, hopefully the people in Russia will rise up and say something and hopefully do something to depose Putin before it gets to that point. And also, if it got to the point of him like considering launching nuclear weapons, that might be the trigger for some of the military people to think now's the time, if ever, to stand up and get Putin out of here. Otherwise, he's going to kill us all, and we're not willing to go to the grave over Putin's ideas because it's one man pushing the war forward, and that's it. Literally, Russia's entire cabinet, Putin's entire cabinet, that is scared of Putin. They're all terrified. They know that in a moment's notice, they could be thrown out of a window if they say one single thing to disagree with this war. And Putin is the one at the helm, and I think that his favor is starting to run out with people. And also, the fear starts getting overridden when they start thinking about wiping out the entire country with nukes. That sort of gets rid of the fear just from Putin himself, what he's inflicting on his own MOD. They start thinking, we better act and do something, or otherwise he's going to get us all killed. So it starts becoming a sort of a good versus bad situation. They have to make a decision.
And it's going to be something where we're hopefully going to see that the Russians make the right decision, but that's kind of the risk at this point that we're going to have to play. But one thing I will say is that if the Russian Federation believes that they're going to conduct nuclear blackmail against the West to try and see that they get a policy of appeasement pushed forward inside of Ukraine, I would say that that is a absolute non sequitur. I would say that that's a hard no, because that is going to lay out a precedent from there on forward that the Western sphere can simply be defeated by threatening nuclear blackmail and getting to the point of actually using a nuclear weapon. That is going to show that that is the case. I would rather say that we should reach the point that a nuclear war might actually happen than try and avoid it completely. Otherwise, we are going to be laying out a precedent that will see the collapse of the Western sphere over the next few decades and the rise of dictatorships like the Russian Federation and China, largely controlling the majority of people living around the world due to their influence that they were able to gain through threatening the West time and time again with nuclear weaponry, and the West time and time again backing down completely. We cannot back off. This is an incredibly dangerous and a very morbid kind of a situation, but in this hypothetical situation, I believe that we have to have the same kind of resolve and commitment that we've had in the past during the Cuban Missile Crisis and during the Operation Able Archer training exercises of 1985, that we will not back down. We cannot back down. If we do, it will be the death of the West slowly. If we stand up and show ourselves to be a strong, unified sphere, we might end up being nuked. There's always a possibility of that. But there also might be a possibility that the Russians are bluffing and that they will back off and they will go to the negotiating table. Either way, we have to make sure that if this is going to be our final hour, then this needs to be our finest hour. And so with that, I hope that addresses this major piece of news fairly well, at least on that final note. But moving on into some other news, to speak of other major things that have been going on today beyond the German Major General statements, we have been able to see some very interesting stuff going on around Rezhal, as we have seen that there is a large amount of preparations that have been made around the Rezhal International Airport by a large amount of different air defense batteries and air defense contingents around the Rezhal Airport, including this NASAMS battery deployed by the Norwegian Armed Forces today. There is a significant amount of air defense that is currently based around the airport at Rezhal. These NASAMS are only a small part of it, provided of course by the Norwegians, but there is an American Patriot air defense battery that is also stationed near to the Rezhal airport as well. At this point in time, Rezhal may actually be one of the best defended areas of Europe in terms of air defense at this moment. And we also have some additional pictures right here of the Norwegian Armed Forces and the NASAMS operational behind them. We can also see them setting up the NASAMS as well and getting them ready to operate. And we can also see the small contingent of Norwegian support vehicles that is a part of this NASAMS battery. All in all, a pretty interesting little deal. And once again, showing us that NATO is taking quiet measures in the background to make sure that if something was to kick off, and if the Russians were to try and attack NATO, at least our most vital logistical hubs within the area at this point would be well protected from any kind of preemptive airstrike. But moving on from that and out of that area, We were also able to see inside of the Russian Federation, well, actually, really quickly, we're going to hold off on that news for just a brief moment. We're going to move on down into the Middle East, because there's also been some major news coming out of the area down here today showing that Israel is preparing to finally act out on the preemptive actions and the preemptive strikes that have been talked about for an incredibly long amount of time against the Islamic Republic of Iran. These attacks against Islamic Republic's nuclear and research facilities has been talked about for around a half year at this point. And Israel is apparently moving incredibly far forward, according to Al Arabia, towards making these strikes a reality. Senior European officials believe that Israel has decided to launch an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities following the inauguration of a new U.S. president. And of course, that inauguration will be happening, I believe, tomorrow. With discussions being had, isn't it happening tomorrow, Matthew, or is it Monday?
No, I think it's Monday.
Okay, it's Monday, sorry. With discussions being had between the president's administration and Israel on such an operation. It seems as though the United States, according to public statements that we've been able to hear, with the changing of leadership that will be happening on Monday, is already starting to move towards a far more hostile, directly hostile stance towards the Islamic Republic of Iran and their proxy forces that exist within the region. However, that has been delayed and has had some difficulties being believed in the public, as we have been able to see that a very lopsided peace treaty has been signed in between Hamas and Israel, to where around 30 hostages are to be released by Hamas, and the Israelis in exchange are to give back several hundred Hamas fighters, as well as a large amount of fuel and food support that will be transported into the Gaza Strip and will be hijacked by Hamas to allow them to continue operations within the Gaza Strip and once again rebuild their power and authority within the Strip. This is a peace treaty that has been heavily criticized on many other news sources, including this channel, but nevertheless, it does still seem that major hostile actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran itself are still underway, and we have been able to hear that there has been some very fiery rhetoric coming out of the United States, Israel, and Iran all towards each other, and it does appear that the Islamic Republic of Iran may finally be seeing that their nuclear research and development sites are targeted in full by an Israeli-U.S. attack in the future. We do not know if that attack will ever happen, but it does sound that it is seriously being considered at this point within diplomatic circles inside of the Israeli government and the U.S. government, and maybe a form of appeasement to the Israelis, considering that we've already heard that there's been major upheaval within the Israeli government due to the terms of the peace treaty that was agreed to with Hamas. And this may be a way to assure them that while Hamas, in the meantime, may appear to have won out in the end, the Iranians, which are Hamas's main provider of arms and finances to be able to continue their operations within the Gaza Strip, may cease to exist in any threatening way for the foreseeable future. The Iranians have been trying to prepare for actions that may be conducted by Israel and the United States, and have been preparing some underground bunkers throughout the country for the Air Force, the Navy, and the military as well, because the Iranians always know that it's best to live under a rock when dealing with America, because, you know, if you sit there and actively watch what the United States is doing, it might scare you. So living under a rock underground is a fairly good thing for the Iranians, because it keeps them blind and unknowing of what the United States really is capable of. But we were able to hear that this secret bunker apparently sucks. Also, I want y'all to hear this guy at the beginning who sounds like he's talking in a warehouse, like in Amazon. Like you can hear like metal clanging around in the background and stuff, like they're fulfilling Amazon orders or something in the background as this guy is talking. But I also want to show y'all Iran's new fishing boat fleet. You see, these are vessels, I want to make this very clear, of the Islamic Republic of Iran's Navy. This is actually crazy to think, because these are on trailers like large fishing boats. So
Yeah, it looks like some type of speedboat or something you take out like for a good weekend, like if you were like a billionaire or something.
But it's equipped with a dishka, therefore it is a naval vessel. So the firepower is extreme, man. Imagine the damage that they could inflict on the high seas with a dishka. I mean, it's got to be incredible. But let's take a look at
what
this.
What are they fishing for, man? They're fishing like a redneck. They got the gun out and they're shooting the fish.
Man, they're gonna sit there and go, "Hell, boy, I think I see a school of fish It's like, you know, it's like they just start laying into them. But beyond that, I do want to address this really quickly to explain why this bunker sucks. The Iranians lauded before they showed this bunker that it was going to be able to house the larger vessels of the Iranian Navy, pretty much in a sense like a submarine pen. There are submarine pens around the world that are built into the sides of rocky cliffs, very deep inside of these cliff sides, so that way normal munitions and ordnances wouldn't be able to directly attack the submarines and destroy them while they're inside of the submarine pens. Such submarine pens have been built and have existed really since World War II, with the Germans really leaning into heavily the use of submarine pens. There are still some that exist in some areas because the concrete that they were built with was so thick there was no way to destroy them. And you can actually see some of those right around here. If I really quickly come down here, this is one of the submarine pens. And let me see if I can show y'all this building right here. Here it is. We actually tried to blow these things up and demolish them, but the concrete they're built out of is just simply so thick it's impossible to demolish these things. So it remains an existent reminder of Nazi control or Nazi occupation of France from 1940 to 1944, still to this day in Saint-Nazaire. But you can see the submarine pens in their entirety. They still exist. And the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and many others, I believe the United States, in some rare instances, also employ the use of submarine pens to be able to protect their submarines while they're at port. The Iranians claimed, however, that not only are they going to have submarine pens, much like this one, but they're also, crazily enough, going to have pretty much ship pens. Something similar to a submarine pen like I'm showing y'all right here, but it would be able to house the larger frigates of the Iranian Navy and protect them from another Operation Praying Mantis-like strike and stop the United States from being able to completely cripple the Iranian Navy within about less than half an hour. However, with footage coming out of this compound, that's markedly untrue. These compounds and tunnels appear to be fairly small in scale, only able to house the speedboat-like patrol boats that the Iranians have, and not larger surface vessels. So the tunnels suck in the larger sense, but let's take a look at them. Also, I like the picture they have out right there. It's almost like they're already having a funeral. They're like, rest in peace. He will be gone by next week.
He was the best bass fisherman that Iran ever saw.
He was able to catch those carp, all those carp. But now they're giving us a hyper view of the tunnel and all of the speedboats that they've piled into the thing. Also,
why would they pack the speedboats in the hallway? Why wouldn't they put it like in a room or something?
Due to budget cuts, they weren't able to build rooms. It's just a giant tunnel. So yeah, like this is literally the thing. It's just a tunnel.
Yeah, it seems a little crowded in there. Like I don't think you can move one of those boats past one another. It's too tight.
You know something I just realized, Matthew? This thing is built to about the standard width of a subway tunnel. So they probably got one of those tunnel boring machines that you use for a subway and just started digging with it until they built this tunnel in its entirety. And then they were like, okay, let's put boats in it. And then that was the end of it. And that's what they have. But here's the little boats operating. By the way, don't be scared by these rockets. They're incredibly small. And we generally know that most of them are unguided. Most variants of them are largely unguided. And the ones that are guided, the U.S. Navy has been able to war game it out, and we can shoot these things down with relative ease. So no real concern to be had there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was ever worried about the quote-unquote Iranian Navy. They shouldn't even really call it that. They should call it the Iranian, Fisher Group. Oh, look at this. They had something.
Look at them blowing up.
Is that the USS Cole?
No. Oh, look, they have an aircraft carrier. Holy moly. Look at that.
Where did they get that?
Oh my lord. Oh, and we can now see them. I like how they hate America, but they wear baseball caps. I always found that to be a weird juxtaposition of anti-Americanism. It's like, we hate America, death to America. But I love that baseball cap. I'm just going to have to nab that. But it's like, why do you do that? And also, I like
hot dogs too. I will say the only thing that I can give them credit for is they keep the place extremely neat. But that's about it. But it'll be real dirtied up whenever it gets hit, though.
Also, I've heard, Matthew, that this guy right here on the right is actually employing Iran's new body armor. It's called a pillow, and you stuff it under your shirt, and it helps to protect you from bullets. At least that's what it looks like he has.
Wishes that was a pillow.
Well, what is that? It's my gut. It's just like that's not bulletproof. But we can see them walking past the boats. We can see a couple of them do have the anti-ship missile cells on board.
I don't know what's up with those really like bad paintings of people in front of these boats, like you were just mentioning a moment ago. I don't know what even that's about. And these paintings are terrible. Like it's what was it done on Microsoft Paint?
I don't know, man. Maybe they're like martyrs of Iran or the commanders of these boats. I have no clue, but it's stupid. And here they go with another long, drawn out drone view of the whole damn thing again. Um,
I'm glad they're giving us a layout of the tunnel, though. This would be perfect for future strikes.
I'm telling you, man, I promise you that they built these tunnels with some sort of like a standard industrial tunnel boring machine because the width of them, it's literally like the London Underground or something like that with like how these tunnels are. Well, the London Underground has tiny, tiny tunnels, but it's almost like a U.S. subway tunnel. And let me go see if I can show y'all one U.S. subway tunnel because I want to show y'all this because it looks as though they used the same kind of tunnel boring systems to do it. So let's see here. This is an older picture. Actually, no, I will go with a more modern one. This is a modern picture of a New York City subway tunnel, one of the more modern ones that has been rebuilt over time. But beyond that, notice the width of it, and also note that it can fit an entire U.S.-sized standard subway through the corridor. This tunnel appears to be almost the same dimensions when you look at it. I mean, it's almost the same height and everything that a U.S. subway tunnel would be.
They probably just borrowed the equipment or something, because I'm sure that Iran didn't have a subway system before now.
They had to have gotten it for. Let's go see if Tehran has a metro. Tehran Metro. They do have a metro, so they have a tunnel boring machine. They probably repurposed the tunnel boring machines that built this subway system and brought them to southern Iran to build those tunnels. That's probably what they did, I would assume at least.
Yeah, probably so, I'd imagine. I'm sure they didn't just steal one off of something because they're massive. So yeah, they probably already had one.
Dang, man, they actually have a lot of stations in Tehran, and they also built a lot of tunnels. Look at the lengths of these things: 54 miles, 15 miles, 20, 15, 40. A total mileage in the subway system, by the way, of 182 miles of tunnels. So they certainly do have the tunnel boring equipment to be able to make something like that possible in the South. And without a doubt, that is why those tunnels exist. It is some sort of a commercial boring machine used for the subway system. And holy moly, Harvey the Drummer, thank you for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. But moving on from the Iranians, because we want to make sure to knock out our international news all in one fell swoop right now, we're going to be taking you all over to the Republic of...
We have a poll.
Yes, we do have a poll. We love the polls. And also, I believe this poll right here is called, let's see, Reshik, which is a very interesting Polish name. But beyond that, sources claim that Israel will attack Iranian nuclear sites in a matter of weeks. And a lot of people are wondering if this is a good move or not. And I don't really think a lot of people are wondering. It almost seems like everyone's definite on this. Everyone is saying that this is a good time and a good moment to go ahead and push forward with destroying Iran's nuclear research and development capabilities before they can be used and deployed in a dangerous and threatening way. Others are saying, a very small group, that this is a bad time or a bad move. Others are saying that any time is bad, this just isn't good, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 73% of the audience said yes, this is a good move and a good time, while 7% said no, this is a bad time and a bad move, and 9% said any time is bad because this is not good at any point. And on this one, I would say that this is a long time overdue, and really, honestly, Israel should have attacked the nuclear sites the last time they launched an attack. And once again, the guy that leaked the plans, he's been caught, that rat within the CIA. He has been locked up, and he will probably be facing some pretty serious charges for that, so he will get his punishment. But Israel now has their chance to move on Iran and take these nuclear sites out. The only concern that I have, though, is you might remember the Iranian president just went to Moscow yesterday, and I'm sure that Iran's probably gotten word that Israel is about to attack their nuclear sites for real this time. It's not just a bluff, and it's also not going to be backed out of, most likely. And I'm not really sure why the Iranian president went to Moscow. It could have been maybe Russia was asking for help, or maybe Iran was asking for Russia's help, so that if their sites are attacked once again, then Russia might do something to attack the West, and Iran might attack the West in return as well. So I'm not really sure what that whole meeting was about, but that is a bit of a concerning point. But generally speaking, that shouldn't deter us. I think we should take the nuclear sites out, or otherwise Iran could be using that nuclear blackmail some years into the future, and we can't risk that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that this is a great time and a good move. It is an aggressive move, and that's what it is designed to be. be. The Iranians will not produce a weapon of mass destruction in violation of non-nuclear proliferation treaties that all signers guaranteed would be adhered to if they had knowledge that a country was attempting to produce a nuclear weapon. We have knowledge that the Iranians are producing a nuclear weapon right now. We know that, we understand that, the intelligence is verified. The United States should actively take a role with Israel in striking and destroying these sites within the imminent future. Not only is that a move to ensure that the Iranians will not become a nuclear power, that is a direct message to the Russian Federation that the United States will have a spine and will go to the point of obliterating some fools, so that way we will ensure that the West remains on top. That may be a good way, using Iran pretty much as our punching bag, to show the Russians that if they try and attempt this stupid, ill-fated plan in Eastern Europe that the German Major General was speaking about, we might not back off, and we might not get to the negotiating table and attempt to make major concessions to them because they want to act like idiots. We might actually see that through to the finish, to the point that the Russian Federation sees about 70% of their people dead by the end of the first year. So I believe that that would be a fairly decent move to make against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and also would be a good message for the United States to send worldwide, is that any active partners of this sphere of the Axis powers at this point that we're seeing will not be able to succeed, and the U.S. will be directly involved in stamping these people out and ensuring that they will largely fail before their plans even come to fruition. That would be my assessment at the moment, and so I would say that this is a great move and a perfect time to do it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Middle East and over into the Republic of Korea. Many people may know the show Squid Game, a Netflix premiere series made for the Republic of Korea about a group of have-nots, as has been explained by the director, that are taken by a group of wealthy businessmen to conduct a series of childlike games, but the failure rate is the chance of death by the guards. But nevertheless, one other kind of drama has been made by the Republic of Korea recently that is starting to captivate the world beyond Squid Game, and that is the Yoon Suk-yeol chaos, or the Yoon Suk-yeol crisis that we're currently seeing devolving right now inside of the Republic of Korea. We saw that he declared martial law last year. The declaration was shot down by the National Assembly. The National Assembly then voted to impeach Yoon and successfully impeached him, now making him a former president of the Republic of Korea. The National Assembly then moved forward with prosecuting Yoon for attempting to overthrow the democratically elected government, and then moved forward to have him arrested. Yoon Suk-yeol then refused to be arrested and barricaded himself inside of the presidential mansion within this area right here, and attempted to stop law enforcement from making their way up there and actually apprehending and arresting Yoon Suk-yeol. However, the authorities under the National Assembly were finally successful, and he was brought to largely a court to be tried for his crimes that he conducted against the Republic of Korea while in the office of president. Today, we've been seeing that mass civil unrest is now evolving inside of the Republic of Korea, and specifically within the capital of Seoul, as we have been able to see that clashes between the protesters and the police are occurring. I don't know what Pepe is doing up there, but here is the unrest.
Oh, damn.
Moving on from
This is
that,
almost like a comedy scene or something like that. You said that guy getting smacked with that green stick over there? Like, that guy was smacking the hell out of that police officer with that stick.
well, I don't know if you saw this, but do you also see that one of the protesters had a police shield with him? You know, like, he literally just nabbed a riot shield. Oh, look at this. He's using it against the police. I mean, like, this is, like, crazy.
Also, look at that one person right there. You see that one person, like, leaned up against the police shield? That person's gotten stuck right in the middle of the crowd, and the police, and it looks like they can't get free.
Yeah, it's a pretty horrendous kind of a situation. It's just absolute chaos right now outside of the court. We also got to see in other instances that some of them were able to make it into the court and then started tearing down the walls. I don't know what they had against the walls in particular, but they started to tear it down.
Huh. Tofu drug construction made in South Korea too, I guess.
I guess. I mean, you hit the wall and it literally shatters. It's not exactly a great sight. Maybe some building codes need to be revised. They also started busting out windows as well. And you can see that right here.
Look at that. And this was at the court?
This was at the court, apparently, that I believe Yoon Suk-yeol was at, if I'm not mistaken.
wow.
So it was a little bit interesting to see that they were just literally tearing down the civil affairs department and other places in the city of Seoul that have to do with the exacting of justice within the country, but it is certainly becoming a large situation. While we have seen that Yoon Suk-yeol finally surrendered himself to law enforcement inside of the country, it appears that there is a significant faction of the Republic of Korea's citizenry that actively supports Yoon Suk-yeol and his efforts to suspend the government. To quickly explain the situation to many, and a very neutral explainer of what happened to lead to this point, a couple of months ago, back towards the latter end of 2024, Yoon Suk-yeol, unannounced, declared martial law in the country and declared that the National Assembly had been suspended. The National Assembly is the South Korean form of the U.S. Congress and is elected by the constituents of the Republic of Korea, as well as the President of the Republic of Korea is also elected by the citizenry. And he attempted to suspend the rights and abilities of the National Assembly and governance, largely at that point making Yoon Suk-yeol the dictator of the country if that had been successful. This has been done in the past, and this is something that some people may not know. And this has actually been a justification in the past as well that he used now by many others, specifically Syngman Rhee and Park Chung-hee. Those are both former presidents, quote-unquote, of the Republic of Korea, but they're largely understood today, and they are dictators by a modern sense. They largely installed themselves into power through a military coup, suspended elections, declared martial law, and suspended the National Assembly in both instances. In both instances, they stated that they were doing this because of the interference of some sort of a foreign power into their country's government, and they were attempting to stop this unholy influence that was being conducted by an external country. Usually, they would say that it was the Communist Chinese, the North Koreans, or some other faction entirely like the Soviet Union. But in recent times, Yoon Suk-yeol made the statement that the Chinese were openly trying to subvert the government and create an insurrection in the country as its justification for the declaration of martial law. That was quite literally the exact same statement that was made by Park Chung-hee when he became the dictator back in the day, back in the early 60s. And Park Chung-hee remained the dictator of the Republic of Korea up until his deposition in 1979. And that was really the bringing forward of a couple of other dictators who were not as successful as Park Chung-hee in retaining power, and then the first democratic elections that truly happened in South Korea were held in 1989. But nevertheless, he used the same justifications that were used in the past. The National Assembly this time, however, actually has the backing of the citizenry, as democratic institutions have largely finally founded themselves as integral parts of civil society inside the Republic of Korea. And so for the first time that we've ever seen in South Korea's history, the military interest enough actually followed the orders of the already shut down National Assembly when they voted unanimously to order the military to stand down. This then allowed the National Assembly to begin a impeachment of Yoon Suk-yeol immediately, which they were able to succeed in and actually had him impeached, meaning that he is no longer the president of Korea at this point. Moving on from that, they are now trying to set an example that those people of the past in South Korea's history, like Syngman Rhee and Park Chung-hee, will not be able to succeed in creating a dictatorship in the modern-day Republic of Korea, and for this reason, they are now attempting to prosecute him to set an example that democratic institutions within these countries will not be overridden by a president with dictatorial ambitions. And so that is what we're seeing at this moment, is that they're following through with prosecuting Yoon Suk-yeol and imprisoning him for those actions. It seems as though there is a decent contingent in the public that is believing that the story that Yoon Suk-yeol put out, and they're trying to say that this National Assembly is run by the Chinese and is attempting to usurp the Western world and turn South Korea into North Korea or something along those lines. But that's what is largely going on in the Republic of Korea at this point. If anyone was really wanting to know what exactly was going on, that may sound like it was a little skewed, at least in terms of analysis, but that's because unlike others who largely look at this through a modern lens, where there's always people saying, like the Romanians, we're suspending elections because the Russians were poopy heads and we think they interfered in it, looking through it through a historical lens, this is actually a fairly common thing that has happened in the Republic of Korea's history, where those presidents have said the exact same things and declared martial law and suspended the National Assembly under the exact same circumstances with really no explanation, rather than that they were trying to maintain control. There also was an external element involved with what Yoon Suk-yeol was doing at this time, or more so what his wife was doing. According to what was going on before the declaration of martial law, his wife was actually being investigated for misappropriating party funds from his political party inside the Republic of Korea to purchase personal items such as expensive purses and clothes. They were being investigated for that, and it appeared that the investigation was also going to move into Yoon Suk-yeol, as he largely would have to be the one to give his wife access to the political party funds to be able to purchase these items with. And so it appeared that the investigation was going to move towards his direction, and he was going to go the way of many other former South Korean presidents since 1989 that largely have been imprisoned for corruption reasons. So it appeared that Yoon Suk-yeol was attempting to beat them out to the punch and declare martial law and suspend the National Assembly, making him the de facto leader of South Korea without any opposition, because he may end up possibly being imprisoned in the future for his possible political scandal with misappropriating political party funds. So that appears to be the entire story that we understand at the moment, from everything put together. So there largely isn't really a reason to support Yoon Suk-yeol. And also some people are saying that the opposition in South Korea, which is not a part of Yoon Suk-yeol's party, is pro-Chinese. They're not pro-Chinese. They are advocating, however, that they should trade or open up larger trading relations with the Chinese, largely for South Korean exports, not imports. Also, by the way, I do have to explain that there will be limited imports from China, but under the current proposed trade regimen that the opposition is putting forward, they're largely looking to be able to sell South Korean products inside of China, helping to bolster the South Korean economy. So it's not exactly a Chinese takeover. It's more so that they're trying to expand their economic trading abilities and GDP growth through some sort of a trading arrangement. And it's really more so leaning towards the South Koreans than the Chinese. So that largely is the situation that we're seeing right now. But a lot of people are talking about South Korea descending into a state of civil unrest over this instance that's happening today, and what will be happening in the future. And a lot of people are believing that the South Koreans will be able to get a handle on this and will be able to prosecute Yoon Suk-yeol successfully. Others are saying that South Korea isn't going to financially recover from this, and that South Korea is going to turn into North Korea. Some other people are saying this just sounds like hype talk, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so let's take a look. 59% of the audience said South Korea will get over this pretty soon, while 15% said South Korea is not going to recover, and 18% said it sounds like it's overhyped. And I will admit that this is not good for a healthy democracy to be going through things like this. But I think ultimately South Korea probably will get over this. It sounds like these are simply supporters of Yoon, and they're not really in huge numbers. Like it's a decent amount of people, but it's mainly just the people in front of the camera, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I think South Korea will be fine. Yoon probably will be held accountable, hopefully, because he should be held accountable for what he did. But I don't think it's going to be something that they can't recover from. So it's definitely not overhyped either, because clearly this is causing a bit of a ruckus, but I don't think it's as big as it's being made out to be. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I don't believe that this is going to be a horrific thing. They're going to end up prosecuting. This is most likely just a little bit of a bumpy spot. They'll probably prosecute him successfully and imprison him for a couple of years, just to set an example that those kinds of things will not be happening in a modern Korea anymore, and that largely will be what it is. It's a little interesting to watch right now, the spectacle that's going on, because usually a lot of people know that, a lot of people perceive that South Korea and Japan are largely free of any kind of political scandal or political intrigue, but that's actually quite the opposite. Japan and South Korea are filled with about as much political scandal as really any other Western country. It's actually sometimes even more interesting in Japan and South Korea, because sometimes some people will do crazy things to try and game the system to get a little bit of money out of it. One time in Japan, there was a guy elected in Osaka. I don't know if you've heard this story before, Matthew, but he was elected in Osaka because he was the only candidate that ran. And so he ended up becoming famous and popular because he was the only guy that ended up running in this area, and he was representing the entire city of Osaka. And years later, they found out that he had been gaming the Japanese political system because the Japanese government pays for government officials transportation costs wherever they go. So every single day, he claimed, literally every day, that he took an 8-hour round-trip train ride from Osaka to Toyooka and then back, which means that he would have never been working. So someone finally caught on to that, and they were like, hey, wait a minute. He can't be taking the same train every day. There's no way that he could be doing this. They investigated it, and he had been lying about it. He had been writing into the Japanese government these stamps, pretty much, that were saying that he was taking this train every single day. And it was an expensive train, mind you, because the journey was so long, round trip. And he had literally been making tons of money. I think at the end it was like $1.7 million over several years on fake train fares, and he was just raking in cash. I mean, it was the craziest thing.
Wow.
He got in prison for it, but those are the kinds of things of political intrigue and scandal that happen in Japan and South Korea. Just to give you all an example, because I have to say this. Unrightfully so, because I'm not saying that Japan and South Korea are not very well-kept places, but unrightfully so, Japan and South Korea get a reputation in the Western world for being completely free of any kind of scandals at all, and that is wildly untrue. South Korea and Japan are riddled with scandals, just like the United States or any other democratic country is, because there's always going to be bad eggs in any of those kinds of systems, and you have to always be trying to root them out. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. Also, before we move on, I do want to say really quickly that I got to mention it. TikTok did just shut down when we went on air. I think it was right when we went live on air. TikTok actually shut down in the United States. So if you go in the TikTok app, it tells you that because of a U.S. law that's shutting down your free speech and completely eroding your First Amendment rights, that for some reason the CCP was really interested in protecting, you're no longer able to access TikTok and look at thirst traps and also other brain rot. So a very unfortunate thing. I'm just kidding. It's actually great.
And also, let's translate it. Basically, it's, they're saying that they're trying to protect your free speech. It's like, no. China's basically saying we don't have the right to brainwash you anymore. So now we're upset and we're going to take the app away. So, also it looks like CapCut went by the wayside as well. It's another editing software. It looks like that one also went offline as well. And now I'm seeing that apparently some other ones, apparently there's people in the government thinking about banning other ones like Temu, AliExpress, Tencent, and other apps, or not apps, but websites like that. So that could be huge if they start banning all those as well.
And I gotta say a big shout out, at least at the moment, to the U.S. Congress for pushing that forward, to everyone who voted for that on all sides. It's great to know that the United States of America and the U.S. government is taking affirmative and assertive action to actually deal with foreign apps that are attempting to influence the American public discourse in a more extremist and communist form. Really great to see that, and it's good to know that we're finally taking some action against such apps that are being pushed forward by the Chinese Communist Party. But anyways, moving on from that, it is now time for us to get on into the question segment, because it's actually a little bit late on into the news. We've been covering the news for about an hour and 30 minutes straight now, and we still have a decent amount of combat footage to cover inside of Ukraine. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat question of the night is going to go to Harvey the drummer, who's of course a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Harvey, for that support. He throws in a $200 donation, the largest one of the night, and huge shout out to you, Harvey, once again for that generous support. And they said, Happy New Year, boys, and Happy New Year to you, Harvey, and also it's good to see you once again on the channel. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a Happy New Year to you as well, Harvey the drummer, and I got to give you a massive thanks for the huge support, because folks like you help this channel to keep on running day in and day out. We're massively appreciative and thankful to folks like you, because if it was not for someone like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible and keep it running right now. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on from that massive super chat from Harvey the drummer, and big thanks once again. This one is going to go to MSC Thumped, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, MSC, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And also, real quick, I was trying to see if they left a super sticker or anything would there. Let's see
left
here.
a comment.
Did not. They left a comment, and they said, does Russia have enough working ICBM nukes to really make good on their nuke threats?
We would assume yes. Of course, we know that most, if not all of them, are in a pretty derelict state. The Russian Federation didn't spend a lot militarily pre-war. We believe that the budget was around 50 billion US dollars. And I once again want to remind y'all that we not only maintain the largest ground army, well, really the largest armed forces in the world inside the United States, and one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world, but we have to put, at this point, around 900 billion to approximately $1 trillion billion into the military every year to make that a reality. The Russians, before the war in Ukraine, were only putting in about $55 billion annually, which is nothing in the big picture. It's hardly anything to be able to maintain the force size that they had, much less a massive working nuclear arsenal. So we would assume that a lot of these nuclear missiles are derelict, but even if some of them, at least in the strategic sense, are operational, they still pose a major threat to Europe and also to the United States as well. And so it really does not matter if they have, say, 500 of them or just 200 of them, because 200 of them would still deal a devastating blow to the United States of America, especially if all of them were able to make it through and made it to the United States. It's kind of the same thing for Russia. You know, like with Russia, it's like, oh, well, what if the United States just reduces their strategic nuclear weapons to 50? 50 nuclear weapons could deal a devastating blow to the Russian Federation. So that largely is what we're dealing with. And that's also another thing that I want to throw out there with China. China doesn't have a large nuclear arsenal. Theirs is actually fairly small, at least compared to what the United States has. And let me go show you all that. They have about 600 operational nuclear warheads, U.S. nuclear warheads. Let me go get you all a number on that. The United States has about, let's see, hang on here. Let me make sure that I can get this number here properly. The United States has around 6,185 nuclear warheads. Out of those, around 1,770 of those are operational. And that's compared to China's 600 operational nuclear warheads. So we have about 3 times the amount of nuclear weapons that China has at this point. But I would guarantee you that the United States isn't going to be going and curb stomping China just because they have a smaller number of nuclear weapons. Because nuclear weapons, especially in those kinds of numbers, are always going to be wildly dangerous. So I hope that does address that fairly well. But I also want to remind you all of this as well. Technically, on paper, Russia has more nuclear weapons than us right now. They only have a few hundred more. It's somewhere around 6,400. But out of those, we are assuming that only about 800 of those are truly operational. So, or maybe even less than that, considering that they have such a deficit in funding. So, in the large part, they have a strategic arsenal that's probably the size of China's. Another interesting thing to tell you all about the Russian nuclear arsenal and the Chinese nuclear arsenal is that China's is almost entirely strategic. So that means that it's intercontinental strike capable. That is something that is a big thing because China actually developed their nuclear strategy in an incredibly different way than the Soviet Union or the Russian Federation and the United States did in our nuclear development cycle. China developed their nuclear weapons solely as a strategic deterrent. They have very few tactical nuclear weapons, so in a battlefield-like scenario, it would be very rare to see them dropping tactical nuclear weapons to destroy large army groups like you would see in between Russia and the United States. So their nuclear arsenal largely is simply a deterrent to going to war with China as another major power. And that's a fairly interesting thing about them. Russia and America, on the other hand, have a large variety of different kinds of nuclear weapons, and they're categorized into 2 groups, tactical and strategic. Tactical nuclear weapons are nuclear weapons of a decent size, but small enough that they're largely for battlefield applications. These kinds of tactical nuclear weapons are used to destroy army groups of enemy forces that are attempting to advance onto yours or attempting to defend a specific area. These tactical nuclear weapons can be used on major logistical sites or large buildups of forces to be able to destroy them almost entirely and also leave them heavily disoriented, allowing for your forces to rapidly advance onto theirs, destroy the remnants, and then advance through pretty much an empty part of the front line at that point. These nuclear weapons are entirely different than the ones that most people would know, which are the strategic nuclear weapons, the intercontinental ballistic missiles that would be fired at the United States. Those are far larger in explosive yield, and usually one missile can carry several of those warheads. That's largely the difference in between the 2 types, because I always see people coming into this chat and saying, a tactical nuclear weapon is a nuke all the same. It might as well be the same thing. They are totally different in application and how they would be responded to. If the Russians dropped a tactical nuclear weapon onto a U.S. Army group in Estonia, we are not launching all of our strategic nuclear weapons immediately at the Russian Federation. We most likely would respond by loading up an F-35 with a B-61 gravity bomb and then dropping a tactical nuclear weapon right onto the Russian Army group that is now advancing into that void that was left by the U.S. forces that were nuked. That's what would most likely happen, and that would be a parity to the response. It would be a direct response to that, not escalating it further. We would then see that over maybe the course of about a week or two from that point, tactical nuclear weapons would be employed over the entire face of Europe, wherever there was an active battlefield. We would see that both sides would be heavily wrecked, or largely their militaries would be greatly decreased in ability and size by these tactical nuclear weapons, but in the end, it is generally assumed that the United States would, well, really NATO, would be able to come out on top in that conventional conflict, and the remnants of our forces would still be advancing into Russia and attempting to largely drive them into submission. It would be at that point, at that particular instant, that the Russians would most likely fire their strategic nuclear weapons at Europe and also the United States, launching them over the North Pole. Some of them actually supposedly can travel over the South Pole, which we wouldn't even be able to see because we don't have any detection systems facing south, interestingly enough. But most of them would be flying over the North Pole. NORAD would pick them up. They would call up the president and say, they're coming in. And so then the president would go, oh shit, get them back. And then we would launch our nuclear weapons right back at the Russian Federation in our mutually assured destruction policy, or doctrine more so. So that's really how it would go, at least the best way that I could explain it in very simple terms. There's also a whole bunch of other moving mechanisms and things involved in all of that. And so I hope that does address that well. MSC thumped, and I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that answers your initial question. It also adds a lot of extra detail about how nuclear war works. And of course, a lot of people are incredibly terrified about nuclear war, and when we talk about it on a human perspective, it's the scariest thing that mankind has ever been able to create. We can actually cause a literal drop in the human population that's not created through natural means like the Black Plague. It's the first time in history that such a thing could actually be done. Not even World War II really dented a chip into population growth. We could actually wipe out 2/3 of everyone in the Northern Hemisphere in 15 minutes within the first year after those bombs exploded, which is a pretty crazy thing to think about. But at the same time, it is a weapon and a deterrent of the United States and our allies, and for this reason, we're largely talking about it in a more clinical, strategic mindset instead of the one where everyone goes, oh my god, we're all going to die, because that's always understood in the background. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with the knowledge I have on that at the moment. And we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news and the Ukrainian frontline news that we got today.
All right, so our last one is going to go to Old Scooter Guy 1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Old Scooter Guy, for that support and helping to keep us running. And he said, well, what's the donation threshold to get a dang? And it's $0, actually. Damn, dang. Both of them. You got both. 2 for 1. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And dang, man, I gotta tell you, thank you for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. Old Scooter Guy 1. Your first super chat ever, and that is the donation threshold to get a dang. Usually we throw in the dang when someone throws in something that's red colored, like Harvey the Drummer's $200 super chat, because those are absolutely insane in size. Honestly, we're always impressed that anyone throws in a super chat at all, even if it's $1. But whenever we see them getting insane, to the point of like $200 or $500, which is the max, we go dang, because we're like, that's crazy. You don't see that often. But still, I hope that does address that well, Old Scooter Guy 1. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and keep it rolling on a day-to-day basis. And I also got to thank you so much once again for supporting the channel for the first time ever. I've seen you in the live chat a good bit. I've seen you around for a really long time, and I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel and supporting it tonight, because folks like you help us to keep this thing running day in and day out. Y'all help us to be able to keep the lights on in the background, something that y'all may not see right now because y'all are just seeing my computer screen. But the lights are on right now, and the bills are paid thanks to folks like y'all who help us to be able to keep in this line of work and continue to report the news to y'all day in and day out. And so a massive thanks to y'all once again for the support, and massive thanks to you as well, Old Scooter Guy 1, for the support, because if it was not for folks like all of y'all, both the folks who supported in super chats and the folks who supported with a like and also just a nice word in the live chat, this channel would not be a reality. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on into the remainder of the news.
Also Enforcer, I'm seeing on Twitter is a video going around, like a little clip here of news channels on YouTube that are live streamers reacting to the TikTok ban right now. And there's one big streamer that covers breaking news, and most people will probably know who he is. I won't call him out because I'm not trying to like make fun of him or anything like that. But he went bonkers when that TikTok ban went into effect, and we can't show it on this show right here. We don't have the ability to show it, sadly. But
Did you
oh my
repost
god,
it?
man, this guy went crazy.
Did you repost it?
Yeah, it's on Twitter right now. I mean, this guy went berserk. I mean, everybody's reposting it, laughing and stuff like, damn, he went crazy over that. He was happy that TikTok got banned. He was exuberant.
Wait a minute. Is it let's see, is it is it a channel that starts with an A?
Yes, it
Dude,
is.
I'm seeing it. I can't hear the freaking audio. It's on the second screen, but I'm seeing it. And it literally looks like the guy is going, "Let's go." Yippee. It's like honestly, I can
His voice was cracking and everything. He was going off.
Man, honestly, I can get behind that kind of patriotic zeal, though, for seeing TikTok get banned. It's not that I, like, hated TikTokers or anything. I want to make that clear. I just didn't like the idea that the Chinese Communist Party was running one of the biggest social media apps inside the United States. That's really what I didn't like. But who can dislike a good thirst trap? I mean, like, who can dislike that? I mean, nobody. Like, come on, right? You know, and who can dislike brain rot? I mean, everyone loves to see their attention spans get whittled down to 15 seconds or less. I mean, come on, who in the world can not like those kinds of social impacts that TikTok was having? I mean, come on, it'd be ridiculous to say that anyone could have a problem with that. I mean, that's crazy. I'm just kidding, by the way. I actually found those things to be highly annoying. That's why I really didn't use TikTok. But anyways, moving on from that, you know, Matthew, there's going to be a lot of people who do book reviews, Matthew, who are going to be out of the business these days because it looks like they don't really have any kind of an ability to do them anymore.
Yeah,
but
that's true. Breaking news! Breaking news! News!
Oh man, they're gonna have to go get on the Tate train now, you know, or that whatever the hell that song was. But anyways, moving on from that and on over into the Oriole direction, we were able to see that the Russians are beginning to modernize Gaz 69s. Nice. These things are Cold War era, by the way, and when I mean Cold War era, I mean like the beginning of the Cold War, like when Winston Churchill was saying an iron curtain is descending over the face of Europe. These cars were just rolling off of assembly lines. Just want to put that out there. So here they are. I also like the piano music, like they're looking at a piece of art, and it's just a piece of shit Soviet car, and then they're gonna start beautifying them. Ooh la la!
You can beautify it by letting it get hit by a Ukraine drone. That'd probably help it.
Man, that'd really make it good.
Man, I wish we could show that TikTok reaction video right now. Also, I'm not making fun of the guy, by the way. If someone's going to clip this and be like, who's making fun of him? No, I've actually watched the guy's coverage on the fires for a long time. I think he does a good work. But that was a funny reaction, though. He had that TikTok ban. I wish we could show it because it's actually, like, pretty funny.
Man, I wish we could. I don't know if we would get copyrighted for that. We probably would. But honestly, though, I can get behind that reaction because honestly, that's the kind of reaction I'd want to give. It's just that tonight we're trying to keep things serious because of the whole, you know, possible nuclear conflict coming down the line kind of news. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit more serious, but still, that was a really good reaction. Honestly, that's exactly how I was feeling. But beyond that, we were able to see considerable damage at the Ingles fuel station. Look at this. Now look at this. But moving on from that, this is what it looked like before. This is what it looked like after. This is before the weight loss program, after the weight loss program. Russians have bombers, Russian bombers hungry. Russian bombers happy, Russian bombers sad. Putin happy, Putin weeping. Very nice to see. 8 tanks were completely destroyed, and others appear to have been damaged as well. But moving on from that and out of the area of Ingles, it's now time for us to move on into the Kursk Oblast and the major news that has been going on in this area. We were able to see that a Russian dugout got blown away. And here's the Russian pictures of their own dugout after it got blown away. When you see it smoldering.
Oh, wow. They literally blew a hole right in the middle of it.
Man, they're like, Bliet, our trench is smoking, Bliet. And they said that they will now be freezing all winter. Womp womp. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see a absolute slam dunk being done inside the Kursk Oblast today. Check this out. Oh, and they already slam dunked one of them, and we can see the mortars landing all around this column as they try and advance, and another BMP got hit. Holy moly. Bliet, my wife. And that thing is burning. And here comes another FPV. Right into the engine bay. Dropping a nade right into the driver's hatch of that MTLB.
Man, just cooking it up Gary's way.
Cooking them up Gary's way. Gary, now I know I was wrong. I messed up, and now you're gone. Gary, I'm sorry I neglected you. Oh, I never. But anyways, moving on from that, we can see
Man.
we see this
I
Russian
was
down
wondering
here.
how far you're gonna go.
He's giving hugs. Hey, and then we're moving on from that. We got to see these Russian vehicles driving around. I don't want to drop too many viewers. We're probably going to lose 300 for that. But we can see another Russian at Sol Column moving through the fields, once again trying another assault onto the Ukrainian positions. As you all know, these are largely ill-fated expeditions. So, oh, and they just got a score of them. They're laying down on the job. Jeff Bezos will not be happy with that. Worker productivity is
Damn,
down.
they just like threw lumber into the air and stuff. Did you see that? Look at that. It was like a shed.
That was crazy. Oh my god! Dude, wait a minute. What was that?
Damn.
Hold up.
It's a tank.
What is... No, that's not a tank. Dude, that's like a little BMD or something like that. Hold up. I gotta show you this because that looks to be the front hull shape of a BMD-2. These things are small. I mean, they are small. Look at that. That thing is tiny. Okay, so let me scroll down. So there's an infantryman next to one. I just want you all to get the size of this thing to really comprehend why I'm bewildered by this. This thing carries like no ammo. It's maybe like, I think like 200 rounds of 30mm for the autocannon and a little bit for the machine gun. But it's not much. And what is insane is that this thing blew up like a nuclear bomb. I don't know what was in it to do that. I guess it was carrying nothing but explosives, but look at this. Like, it gets hit and then it just goes nuclear. I don't even get it. Like, that is crazy.
The shockwave was like Beirut explosion levels of shockwave. That was the strong one.
Man, truly a tragedy. But we can see here that we can see a Russian soldier just kind
The
of...
Grim Reaper.
Oh.
He was not the Reaper, though. The Reaper was coming down on him.
Man, dude, that guy down there, he wasn't the Grim Reaper. He looked up into the sky and said, "Is that the Grim Reaper?" And then he got hit. But moving on from that clip and on to the next one, we can also see other dugouts getting hit by drones. Not only did the Russian assault fail, but the Ukrainians immediately started to move the drones into operating on the remnants of the Russian defense that existed on the front line. So, not a good day in this specific segment of the front for the Russians.
Yeah, it's just not going good. Like, when the Russians are failing, they're starting to fail extremely bad. Oh, look at that cluster. Damn. You can't get away from that.
Dude,
wait a minute. Was that a mobile couch? Did you see that? Go back. What was that?
Mobile couch?
What is that? A couch in the middle of the road?
Wait a minute.
Go back, man. Go back.
It's about to get the... Where?
What is that? Is that a couch? It looks like a sectional in the road.
This?
Yeah, what is that?
I think this is like a giant concrete block. It's bigger than a tank, though. That's a tank right there. And this thing's like massive.
It looked like one of those like rooms to go sectionals, like sitting right in the middle of the road, like for a king size version.
Dude, that if that is a couch, you're about to hear someone come up and go, "Hi, I'm Shaq. I lost my couch. Do you know where my couch is?" It's like somewhere in the Kursk Oblast, apparently, because that thing is huge as hell. I mean, it's bigger than a tank. You know, honestly, man, I heard that when Shaq was growing up, he used to play with Russian tanks as toys because his hands are about as big as the tanks. So he'd sit down on the floor, he'd be like, "Big Shaq likes to play with tanks," or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that. By the way, if y'all ever want to see Shaq, just go order a Papa John's pizza. He's always on the front cover of the Papa John's box these days. But moving on from that tank got hit. And we now see them dropping some bomblets on the Russians below. Oh my lord.
Oh.
I don't know what was going on right there. I think we just saw an NKVD style like execution. I don't know. I'm just kidding, by the way.
I saw him chunk a rock or something like that at somebody.
Dude, the end of this video is something. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it is something else. But moving on from that, once again, the Kursk Oblast just didn't look good today. We also got to see the Ukrainians hitting some Russian armor, like this little BMD. I don't know what the hell's up with all of these BMDs around here. I'm guessing that an airborne unit moved into the area. Oh, what do we got here? What do we got? Uh-oh. Oh, and then you got him. Oh, and then they're hitting another BMD. Holy moly. Oh. Also, I don't know why in the world they gave nods to an elephant. That just seems to be wasteful spending. But anyways.
One thing's for sure, he'll never forget it.
Here is why Ukrainian elephants are the best at seeing in the night in the world.
Our elephants don't miss because they're equipped with American nods.
Our elephants are able to seek out the carrots at night because they're equipped with NVDs. Or something like that. But we can see them just slamming the Russian armor out there in the fields. The fields are not growing anything this year. They're burning things. But we also got to see, unfortunately, that Russian fiber optics are still being used to decent success by the Russians in the Kursk Oblast because they've finally been able to get over the significant issue that they've had with the drone jamming systems that the Ukrainians have been using. Unfortunately, they are starting to take out a more larger number of Ukrainian civil vehicles being used for logistical purposes throughout the Kursk Oblast. And we can see them using them time and time again right here.
Oh, man.
A very unfortunate thing. Hopefully the Ukrainians can start to find a counter to the Russian fiber optic drones as they finally appear to be cutting through the large amount of electronic warfare interference that the Ukrainians have been able to keep up as a consistent thing over the course of the whole war. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we were able to see some new Russian army vehicles that are being tested out. This is called the Shitda, which is very equivalent to the Lada. And also they are playing Lyub over it. They actually have a band in Russia called Lube. I'm not kidding, pull them up. And they're very popular. I don't know what the hell these things are. They're terrible.
Just clunkers, really. It's sad when the wrecker is nicer than the thing it's hauling.
Also, I like how they're putting them into almost like a sport racing truck right here with how the trailer's colored. It's like, hey, we're going to go on the race. What is the race? To die. We're going to figure out who can do it the quickest. I don't know what any of this stuff is, though, man.
I have no clue. It's junk, that's for sure, though.
Man,
look at this. Oh my god.
A Morton Joe's about to pop up and go, you are going to be a great Russian, shining and chrome. And then, like, spray chrome into someone's mouth or something like that in a second.
Oh, look, they have it with, like, a chicken pin thing up on the side.
Oh, yes.
One reality.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it's just crazy. It really is crazy, man. We were, I don't know if we were lagging or what right there, honestly. But moving on from that, we did get to see this Leopard 2A4 with ERA armor all over it, courtesy of Getty Images. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's time for us to move on to the next one, where we're also able to see some Ukrainian special forces. And look at this guy's putting the thumbs down. Why? What the hell is going on? This guy has an AR though. This guy looks to have a CZ Bren 2, but also there's the CZ Bren 2 up close. Kind of neat. Moving on from that, we're now going to move on to our next little picture where we got to see a small accident. It's just a tiny one. It's no big deal. Here it is. We're going to be muting that, but it looks as though a drunk driver flipped over a 36-ton tank. I don't know how they do it, but they do. And there it is. And they're all trying to sit around and figure out how the hell they even did that. It's a mystery. Well, moving on from that clip and on into the next one, we also got to get the Russian casualty report as well, and the losses were busting.
Man, they were short one Bobcat. They could have been 3,700, but they skipped out today. The entire right column is at 0, but we do have some losses on the left side column, so tell us more.
And Miss Disa said that all the losses were below the 7-day average, but I like to always be an optimist. The losses are still pretty good. 1,340 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 13 APCs, 69 supply trucks. Nice. 0 main battle tanks, 21 artillery pieces, 13 drones, and that was it. It wasn't an incredibly high day of losses, but still, it was a decent one. Moving on from that and out of the area, it's now time for us to move on up into Vovchansk, bled. What happened to Vovchansk? Well, they took prisoners. 6 of them right here in the back of this trunk. And then they also took, believe it or not, more prisoners in another area right here. Here they are. 5 of them. They're also playing music in the background, so we're going to mute that.
They look happy to be here.
Man, this guy is sitting like he's a schoolboy, and he's about to say, "Mr. Head Principal, can I please take the day off?" or something like that. Like, can I please get an absence? I swear.
Look at that guy on the left, though. His whole face has been taped up. You couldn't see anything.
Dude, he's just vibing. Like, he's just vibing over there. But here it comes. They're about to show how these guys were taken prisoner. Well, their BTR was hit for starters. And then they just started dropping bomblets on them, running drones through windows. and wonton quadruple 8 said, "Best job I've ever had, Gordo," and that's from the movie Fury, which painted Americans to be war criminals. I'm not really a big fan of that movie. But when you see them continuing to drop more bomblets on the Russians, isn't it crazy to think, Maddie, that Fury came out like 9 years ago?
That is crazy. It feels like it came out just yesterday.
I know, right? And I remember that there was like this giant hype for it because, it's going to be an American war movie, they're going to beat the bad guys. And then they pretty much made out the Americans to be the bad guys and like hardly any better than the Nazis. And I was like, okay, this is just stupid. Like, I'm not going to lie. I was not a big fan of Fury because it's like, executing prisoners. It's like, yes, that did happen, but not as like a norm, and I don't know why they made it out to be like that in the movie. And also there was a whole bunch of other things as well. I was just like, I don't understand it. I just don't understand this movie. But moving on from that and down south of Svatove, we did get to see that a Russian loaf flipped. Also, by the way, this is the axle, the rear axle of the Bahanka. It's sideways right now. That's not normal.
Something tells me it's really easy to flip a loaf because it's built like a top-heavy piece of junk.
Man. And they're all walking around it on fire. Like, the gas tank could just explode at any minute now, and they're just right up there on it. Like, oh, that could happen. They're all going to get sprayed with hot gas in the minute, and it's just going to catch on fire, and they're going to be, what happened? Or something like that. Or there's going to be that one alcoholic that pops up and says, quick, take it off the ground before it catches on fire. What are you doing? Something like that. But moving on from that and down to Severus, we also get to see a Ukrainian tank commander taking a little ride with some good music. Look at him. He's in the commander's position. That's how we know he's the commander.
Also, by the way, I was just doing a scouring around look for news here real quick. Did you know that TikTok's actually banned in China?
Yes, I did. They have an equivalent, but it's not TikTok itself.
Yeah, it's Douyin or something like that. But yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was actually banned. I saw they didn't have a TikTok variant or, like the TikTok app itself in China. I thought it was just not a thing and Douyin was the replacement. But TikTok's actually banned in China, which is a distinction I did not know.
Yeah, it is completely banned. That's why you don't see Chinese people on it. Also, let's see. Everyone's talking about Fury. Everyone's like, yeah, that movie sucked. I'm glad to see that everyone agrees. I felt like that might have been a hot take that I put out right there. But I didn't like the movie Fury at all because of its portrayal of Americans in the war. Because there were atrocities sometimes, but they were very rare on the American side. That's why at the end of the war, if you ever listen to Germans that survived the war that were in the military, they were like, let's all take a road trip across Germany to leave the Eastern Front to go surrender to the Americans and the British and the French because they are going to treat us far better than the Soviets would ever. At all, period. And it's like, why in the world are we portraying Americans in an American war movie like they were war criminals, not war heroes? I didn't understand that at all, and I was like, I didn't like that one bit. But anyways, moving on from that, we can talk about that more in the question segment here in a minute. But we also got to see a Russian van blown to pieces. Actually, it was blown to pieces literally in the first second of the clip. So here's the clip. Oh, believe that!
Damn. Holy crap.
Вот так вот нахуй.
He's now breathing heavily. This gets him excited. And it looks like the Bahanka has been shredded.
I had the laugh of somebody who's just shit themselves.
Now let's see.
Somebody said, why is he walking towards it? Yeah, good question. That's a very good question. I guess he's dazed.
Russians are attracted to open flames and explosions. They just have to walk towards them.
Hey, Ivan, why are you walking toward that exposed nuclear reactor? I'm drawn to the light, Bliat. I'm drawn to it.
The graphite, I can taste it on my tongue, like I have to get closer. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the next part of the clip, and now everyone's starting. Now some people are like, "What do you mean Fury's bad?" Or some people are saying, "I guess that's why my grandfather said that they took no SS prisoners at the first camp they liberated." Oh no! Oh my lord! So they didn't take prisoners at those camps because usually the Jewish prisoners at the camps would beat them to death, and then very rarely, because a lot of those instances were recorded, very rarely some American soldiers would shoot some of the SS guys on sight, because they were absolutely appalled at what they were seeing inside the camp. But commanding officers usually got the situation under control very quickly, so Americans were not just slaughtering SS guards everywhere they went. Usually it was actually the prisoners themselves that would end up killing most of the guards that were left. And also another thing that I have to point out is that usually most SS guards wouldn't stay, because it was already made very clear by that point in the war that they were going to be tried as war criminals and largely executed if they were caught. So usually they would disappear from the camps when American forces were about 15 miles or 10 miles away, and then they would go and don civilian clothes and try and hide and lay low and hope that the Americans didn't identify them, capture them, and then try them as war criminals. So that's probably the reason why your grandfather didn't have any SS prisoners. Most of them were probably killed by the Jewish prisoners of the camp, or most of them had already fled before the Americans had arrived and taken on civilian clothes, so that way they didn't look like an SS guard and were taken as a war criminal. But anyways, moving on from that into the next clip, we also get to see them hitting some Russians in Touretsk. And just check this out. They got the washer and bolt system on. Here's why Ukrainian washers and bolts are the best in the world. Boom! And they hit them dead on the nail.
And they hit him dead on the nail. There was a nail down there, and they hit him right on the head.
Man, and that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see a little bit further behind the lines another combat flight. And we see them flying over a pole. I don't know why they flew over the pole. Like, say if they misjudged that,
Playing a little risky.
Man, they just playing a little Russian roulette with the pole. And that's the end of the clip.
This is an interestingly built up road right there. It's like built up on a berm or something, like it's like a levee or something. I don't know.
I'll be honest with you, it's almost built up like it's a railroad berm, so that way they could keep the gradients low. It's like, huh, that's interesting. That's fairly interesting. And with that, we're moving on into our next clip near to Orlivka, where we also get to see a lack of modern vehicles. They're using BTR 50s, which were made in the 1950s. Let me go see if I can find y'all those. They're interesting looking. They're not good looking when you can actually see them in their natural state. So here's one in their natural state. They're ugly. Brother, ooh.
Yeah, I would say, brother, ooh, for sure. That's hideous.
Brother, ooh. There's one right there. These things are terrible looking. But anyways, they're starting to use them because they're running out of armored equipment. But moving on from that and further down the lines towards Pokrovsk, we also get to see them hitting more Russian forces. We were able to see this right here.
This is the Marmasa, the Viking Brigade.
And we can see them bringing in the drone, the Muramasa getting ready to slam him. And looks like
he was trying to shoot it.
Oh, he had a shotgun too. Look at that.
Oh, he missed.
He missed. Unfortunate for him.
He missed.
Disqualified. And then we can see it cooking on the field. Do not finish.
Do not pass go. Do not collect 200 rubles.
Man, we're about to sit there and put them in the Songun system. You know what I mean? They're in the hostile
We're about
class.
to put them in the jail, and we're not letting them bail out.
And we can see here that they're hovering over the cart. It's now in blazes.
I guess they just want to see a little fire. Everybody's got a little bit of a fire streak in them, I guess. They're just going crazy. Oh. How'd the
Man,
Russians make the same mistake over and over again? They kept just driving one after the other down the street just to get taken out to the slaughter.
man, I just don't know. This is a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. And also, let's see here. I still see people talking about the movies, and then someone said, "Don't insult my grandfather." I didn't insult your grandfather. I was just telling you why that was probably the case. That was just explaining that because that's how it happened. I've read about it.
I don't even know what was going on with that. I saw somebody going off about their grandfather. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't remember
like,
anybody
well,
saying
well, that
anything
was
about your grandfather.
well, that was the person I was replying to because I read their message and it said something along the lines of, "Well, I guess that's why my grandfather didn't take any prisoners at the first camp they liberated." And I was like, "No, that's probably not the case at all." And then I explained that, and then that was taken as me insulting their grandfather, and it's like, how in the hell is that insulting your grandfather? I'm just explaining why that probably was the case. But anyways, also, what the hell was up with Russo Riz? What is this? What does this mean?
The drones rizzing them up, you know what I mean? They're getting rizzed up so much they can't even take it.
I'm telling you, man. It's the Rizzler. And we can see them flying in the next drone. And they're checking out the vehicle. Once again, another one destroyed. There's just a graveyard of destroyed vehicles out here, one after the other.
These drones just lurking around too, like wolves out here.
And we can see the drone coming on in and finishing off that vehicle, which had already been heavily damaged. We can now see it's on fire and cooking.
Andrew Honeycutt said, "Don't get butthurt over a bad movie," and Forster explained it well. Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I mean, it
I'd
was a
say
decent
so.
explanation to me.
I mean, hell, when you like some people are going, "What do you mean it didn't represent the Americans badly?" Okay, so when they had that part in the movie to where they had a German prisoner in a town and they were like, "Look at him, he's a GD crowd," and then they gave a pistol to some new member of the tank crew and said, "Blow his brains out." That doesn't represent America poorly. I mean, that's the execution of a prisoner of war that's unarmed. That is the worst representation of an American soldier of World War II that you could give, is executing unarmed prisoners. Like, that is the worst. And then from that point on, there was just even worse things. I mean, it was horrendous the way they represented Americans in that movie. It was like they were going out of their way to try and make the Americans look as heartless and bad as the Germans, which historically just simply was not the case. And sure, there were atrocities that were conducted, like the Boscari massacre and a whole bunch of other things, but generally, those were few and far in between. The Germans, in terms of atrocities, conducted so many of them, they're impossible to even record, recollect, or recount most of the time. America conducted so few atrocities that we remember practically all of them from World War II. It's a huge difference. And so I think it's very unfair to represent Americans as pretty much heartless, thoughtless, cruel animals on the battlefield like the German counterparts that they're fighting. It was not at all a good representation of Americans, in my opinion. But moving on from that, we did get to see the 109th TDF also knocking out Russian forces in the front line around Pokrovsk. And we can see them slamming them.
Also, someone just asked about Geiger counters. That's a good one. I can't wait to answer that one. They're giving them the slammy. Whoa, Jack.
Whoa, Jack. Whoa! And we can see them here, lining them up. And going in. Oh, and they got right in there. And it's going to blow. Oh, and there it goes. They got him.
Someone said, "Have you fellas been in a war before?" Oh, yes. A daily war. A war in the mind. No, not really. No, we've not been in a war.
No, but I read, and I read about people who have been in war and their experiences with it. And war crimes do happen, but to make a whole movie to where it looks like war crimes are endlessly happening from American forces is blatantly untrue and a misrepresentation of U.S. forces.
Angel Art said, "An internet war." Oh, yeah. Nothing like an internet war. A little spit for spat type of war. Not a good one.
And also, I love this whole goofy thing that goes on these days, Matthew, well, if you've never been in a war, you can't talk about war. It's like, well, why the hell are you here on this channel watching this thing? It's like, you haven't been in a war. Why do you care? It's like, it's that same... Go ahead.
As like Buzz Aldrin coming back and saying, "Hey, look, you can't talk about the moon. You've never been to the moon." It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, thank you, Buzz.
Man, it's like, okay, so I guess I can't vote in the election then because I've never been in a political position, so I guess I can't really have a say in who I'm voting for, so I'm just gonna not vote. It's like that same kind of thought. Like that's so dumb. Like that is honestly one of the dumbest kinds of pushes I've seen in the modern day. Is if you have not done A, B, or C, you cannot talk about A, B, or C. It's like I haven't done cocaine, but I can tell you that it does bad things to people. Hot Dog Man is a great example. I don't have to do it to know. Like it's like that would be an easy one to get. But also, look at this highway of death for the Russians. I mean, it's just desolation.
This is a highway death. Also, another thing that annoys me with the modern society these days, since we're on the topic, is when someone makes a mistake. Like, for example, and not like an unforgivable mistake. Like, of course, if somebody does something heinous, you can't really just like say, "Oh, like you're forgiven," and just move on from that. You got to sort of, punish them a bit. But if someone makes a goofy mistake, like in the public view or something like that, everybody wants to immediately cancel them right off the bat. Like, oh, that person's got to go. They made one mistake, and not give them any leniency whatsoever, even if it's their first mistake they've ever made. Like that's another really bad thing as well.
Man, dude, like someone like he eats pizza with a knife and fork. Get him! It's like stuff like that these days. It's like just superficial things that people get canceled for.
Yeah, it's almost like if for example, if hypothetically, if I had like the #1 rank on like Microsoft Flight Simulator or something like that, and I didn't actually achieve it myself, and I paid somebody to get there, and I tried to convince everybody that I was the one who got it, and then people found out, and then people wanted to cancel me for it. I mean, it's just Flight Simulator. It's just a video game.
Yeah,
And what would be even worse than that is if I owned a social media platform, like let's say Enforcer Matt Chat, and I had people's verification tabs and stuff like that, and I decided to take away one of the criticisms, a verifications tab, just to get even.
like
That'd be crazy, by the
people
way.
are just soft these days, man. They're always trying to find something to complain about. Like also like another example would be like when you sit there and you know you're like the richest person in the world, say, like in a hypothetical scenario. So a lot of people take your words to be very important, and so you say that you don't like a war that's going on in Eastern Europe because people are dying. But then on the flip side, you also say that the United States should invade the United Kingdom so that way we could overthrow their government and install a government more suitable to what we believe in. Or for a better example, you sit there and say that you're 100% behind the citizens of the United States, and then for no reason at all you support visas which actively are taking jobs away from college educated people. It's just crazy to think that people get flamed over stuff like that. It's just little things, and people just get roasted and almost canceled for it. Just nuts, honestly. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see this rare drone getting shot down today. It's called a tachyon. And I think they fired a tachyon beam at this thing because it went down to the ground. Like that song at the end of the Wall-E movie. You know the one I'm talking about, Matthew? We're coming down to the ground. And it didn't make any sense. I didn't get that song.
Right. It's been a big minute since I've seen Wall-E, so I couldn't actually reference that song. I apologize.
As you know, I have photographic memory, so I still know the whole song. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see that this Russian S-300 that got obliterated back in 2023 is been carved up, and the front part of it still remains as a memorial to the soldiers that burned inside of the vehicle. What a memorial for sure. One to remember. Moving on from that clip, though, and on out of that bit of news, it's now time for us to move on down to Kherson to check out this tank that was firing on the Russians. Look at that. Really nice one, actually. I like the way they fitted that thing out. But moving on all the way... And moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, we also get to see the address from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on this very day. And so let me get y'all to it really quickly. And so without further ado, here is the short-lasting speech. And so here it is. Peach!
Українці, українки, сьогодні після ракетного удару по Києву весь день тривав розбір завалів, тільки під вечір завершили, тривають роботи в Запоріжжі, шукають людину під завалами. Зараз рятувальники працюють на місці ракетного удару в Харківщині. Усім, хто постраждав від цих ударів, надається необхідна допомога. Я вдячний всім лікарям, працівникам ДСНС, комунальним службам, поліцейським нашим, які задіяні в рятувальній роботі. На жаль, були забрані життя цими ракетами. І в Києві, і в Запоріжжі є загиблі. Мої співчуття всім рідним та близьким. Удари були, зокрема, балістикою. Незмінно працюємо заради більшої кількості систем ППО для України, сучасних систем, які можуть збивати таку балістику. над тим працюємо, щоб наша українська армія могла активно діяти проти пускових установок ворога, в тому числі на російській території. Я вдячний усім партнерам, які підтримують нас у цьому. Наша далекобійність – це один з ключових інструментів захисту життя. Я дякую всім нашим воїнам Збройних сил України, Служби безпеки України, ГУР, служби зовнішньої розвідки, які для нас, для всіх українців, забезпечують необхідну далекобійність, зокрема і нашими власними силами. Щоночі можна побачити, як війна повертається додому цілком справедливо завдяки нашим дронам і ракетам на російські військові об'єкти. Сьогодні також дуже добре попрацювали українські правоохоронці, СБУ, ДБР, Національна поліція, наша прокуратура, є протидія зрадникам та різного роду схемам, які послаблювали нашу державу, наше українське суспільство. І кожен, хто стає на шлях проти України, проти закону в Україні, повинен пам'ятати, що буде відповідь. Готуємо зараз також і нове рішення по санкціям РНБО. Завтра буде указ. Слава Україні!
Героям Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And oh, by golly, it's time for us to get on into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And I gotta say that it is an incredibly fun segment. One of the best segments because we get to talk about literally anything and everything. And it's wonderful. It's great. It's wunderbar. And it's a great thing. It's a great thing. What can I say? We love to talk to all y'all. We really do. And so with that, it is time for us to get on into that segment and start talking. A lot of talk. I mean, loads of talk, as a matter of fact. And I also got to give a big thanks to everyone who's been here tonight. We've had about 57,000 people watch the stream so far, and about 10,100 people here at the peak. I mean, it's been an impressive night, and we got to thank everyone for coming here tonight, and I hope that y'all continue to choose us to be your primary source of news day in and day out. And if you have enjoyed today, before we get on into this question segment and talk to all of y'all, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like and comment. We actually hit 336,000 subscribers today. Absolutely whoppers. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. We got to say, that's incredible. And we got to thank all of you for coming here and joining this channel. And also, I hope that to everyone else who's going to be joining this channel tonight, we give you all a big, hearty welcome. And of course, welcome you all on into the Enforcer channel and our amazing community, the Lee Spring Army. And so, without further ado, Matthew, I understand that we have some incredibly interesting questions tonight. And Matthew, what do we got?
And we do have some very interesting questions tonight.
Are you
but first of all, yeah, no. But first of all, before we jump into our super chat questions, which are fresh out of polls, by the way, let me go over some news that's currently happening right now. We're being told that both TikTok and CapCut, and CapCut's a very popular editing software, is now offline in the United States as the congressional ban goes into effect across the country. So people are getting the message that a law banning TikTok has been enacted in the U.S. and you cannot access TikTok for now, and they list the name of the president in there to tell people basically to go harass him. That's what the little TikTok message is saying right there. And of course, do not do that, folks. Do not do that. That is what they're hoping you do. But, hopefully the ban stays in effect, and hopefully it's not reversed, because it sounds to me like it probably needed to go, in my opinion. So, sounds like TikTok is out of the window for now. And also, let me check here. There's also some other apps I think got taken out with it, but I don't have those in front of me right now. But apparently it was like Lemon 8. I've never even heard of that app. But there's several others that ByteDance actually controlled that are also apparently banned as well, according to the news articles here. So it sounds like it's fresh out the way. But Enforcer, what do you think about that? What do you think about TikTok getting banned? I guess it's clock ticked out. TikTok.
I guess you could say it ticked its last talk, but most importantly, it sounds like Lemon ate the dust. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of apps seem to have been taken out today, but I'm sure that many people are going to be harassing the president, the incoming president of the. Well, actually, is it the current president or the incoming president that they put in that?
He is the president-elect.
Okay. So I'm sure that many people are going to be harassing the president-elect about how they can't watch their typical brain rot, and also how they can't watch their favorite thirst traps, putting them things out there and backing that ass up like they're from Baghdad. I'm sure that there's going to be many people out there complaining about that, surely. But something that's interesting? it doesn't really matter because this is the last term of the incoming president-elect. So it doesn't really matter. It's not like you get to choose if you're going to vote for him again or not. This is literally it. This is the final term. So, that's something that I find interesting there. It's like, this guy did it. It's like it doesn't even matter because it's not like there's going to be any consequences for him. His run's over, like after 4 years. So, that's interesting to me. But beyond that, one other thing. Let's see here. See, someone said, should have never been allowed in the USA from the beginning. I completely agree with that, Tony G. It should have been an American app that created the brain rot that we see today. It would have happened. I mean, like Vine, I think the collapse of Vine, Matthew, is what really led to the rise of TikTok, if I remember correctly, right?
I think Vine was bought by Instagram at the time. I believe, if I have that correct. I think it was bought by them, and then Instagram was bought by Meta, which is formerly known as Facebook. So they've all sort of like switched hands over time and sort of conglomerated and consolidated into one company. Most of them being owned by Meta, which is of course the Zuck. And the Zuck is a whole new person now, by the way. He's completely changed. But also, Enforcer, have you seen those videos of him like doing like the martial arts and stuff like that? He's like a totally different person. He was like surfing with like an American flag in his hands or something behind a boat.
He's really trying to change the public relations image lately. Interesting. Also, by the way, some of y'all are like, well, that sounds really really pessimistic of that. Well, it's because no one that is involved in public image is ever, most of them, truly actually revolving around what they are. Zuckerberg is an entirely different person in private than what any of y'all would know. So is Elon or Bill Gates or any of those people. They're totally different people. The image that they carve up for the public is a very curated one meant to appeal to specific demographics within the American population and ones that they believe will be able to help them out in business. A large part of a businessman's perspective, especially heads of companies like Elon, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg is being able to present themselves as likable or relatable people because it helps them to be able to attract investors for their companies or make sure that they remain within the good graces of the public, which are consuming their products. That's a big part of it. So sounds to me like he's changing his public relations image because of a change maybe in the demographics or the shift in demographics. So he's trying to appeal to that new audience. Sounds like it to me.
Because Zuck went from a straight up lizard, straight up to like somewhat of like what would be called an alpha Chad in some people's definition. You working out, got the tan going on, got the gold chain. He's wearing the quote unquote drip, and also doing the martial arts too. And he's also going on the Bros podcast too. So I don't know what happened. Zuck just completely turned around. My guess would probably be, if I had to take a stab at it and speculate, he might have hired like a PR firm or something to turn his public image around because his public image was horrible. And that's part of the reason why Facebook actually rebranded into Meta, is because Facebook was getting a bad rap because there were whistleblowers coming out saying that there was not great things going on with it and stuff like that. And maybe he decided, not only do we need to rebrand Meta, but I need to rebrand myself too because I'm dragging it down.
Yeah, I think that's probably what was going on. Because it's it was not going well beforehand for any of his companies or anything like that. So I think the rebranding is attempting to save the company. Like some people out there, like I can think of great examples. Like truly incredible examples of that kind of a thing going on. Really any newscaster that's been fired from a major organization and has completely flipped their tune when they go to a new one. Like that Cuomo guy, like he went straight from CNN and saying CNN political stuff. And then I think he got brought on, what is he on now, Matthew? Like Fox, and he's saying Fox News stuff,
No, he didn't go to Fox. I think he went to like Newsmax or something.
But now he's saying a completely different political leaning of stuff and saying it like he believes it. That's just how it works in that kind of a world. It really is kind of how it works in our world on YouTube. A lot of people try to rebrand themselves when they're dying in one category, hoping that they'll make it in another. And Hot Dog Man is a great example. He's trying to rebrand himself as one of the larger, more successful live streams that runs in world news currently. It's not really doing well for him, but still he's trying, and that's a great exudance of that example. But anyways,
and also Elon's trying to rebrand himself as a pro gamer.
Well, watch out, buddy. We might get a cease and desist or get served with papers here before long. Whoa. It's like, whoa.
I'm just saying what I saw. That's all. But I guess he's his own man, so he can do what he wants.
Man, I'm telling you, man. It's you got to be careful, man. You could be like, hey, I don't really like that guy. immediately served with papers on a frivolous lawsuit. It's like all right, it's like that's interesting. And then it becomes litigation hell. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And let's see here. Let's see. Wait, hang on. I want to say, uh, hang on. A lot of people are saying LMA. One second. I'm trying to see if there's any because let's see here.
Wait, David Tablet said it sounds like they're all pretty phony.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, they are pretty phony. Like, I will say this, I have nothing personal against Zuckerberg, but when I hear him talk, and he may be telling the truth, but it's just the way he comes across. He comes across as so untrustworthy. He just has a really hard time, like making himself sound like he's telling the truth. He may be actually not lying about anything, and he could be saying like the sky's blue, the grass is green, and I would still have a hard time believing it. Like I would rather hear it from anybody rather than Zuck to believe something like that. I think that's mainly because all the things he's done in the past to sort of like lose the trust of the public. That I think that, but it's also just the way he says it. Also, Bill Gates is another one. It's like I don't know what's up with Bill Gates. He has this like really smug attitude, and Bill Gates has never really been super likable. He's done really good things with his company, and so has Elon and the rest of them. They're great capitalists, and they're also really great at building companies, and you have to give them credit for that. But on a personal level, it's like, very, very interesting characters.
And yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of it's just weird. Like most of them, all of them are practically phony. I mean, that's just the reality of it, and that's the reality of the business that they're in. We keep ourselves real. I mean, what you'll see on air is what you get in real life. Like if you've ever run into us in person, like we're exactly the same. But it's interesting to see how they do their things because it's all fake. I mean, it's just wildly fake. Mark Zuckerberg's a great example, but there's some other examples as well. Those who own social media platforms generally are great examples of it. And it's really just all I can really say about it is it's interesting to see and it's interesting to observe. Because I can tell you this, with Mark Zuckerberg, and really all of them have what I call the corporate personality. Matthew knows exactly what I'm talking about because we had some friends for a while. We've never run into people with a corporate personality in person, and then we ended up trying to make friends because we didn't know what these kind of people were like with people that I'd say have a corporate personality. And you do not really realize what kind of people these folks are until you deal with them enough, and then you're like, these people are fake as hell. They lie through their teeth about everything, like everything. They'll come up with a story about what they did that day to make it seem more relatable to you, because they don't look at people as people and themselves as just a person with their own likes and interests. They look at themselves as a salesperson, and what they're trying to market is themselves to you. So they'll just openly lie about themselves. So if they look at you and they're like, okay, let's see, we've got a white guy who wears polos and he's living here and he talks like this. He must be within this kind of specific demographic. So we're really going to try and appeal to that. Yeah, I was just watching this insert political influencer guy, and I really think I like him a lot because they think that you like them too, and they're trying to create a relatable connection with you. To be able to try and eventually see if they can use you as a connection later. And nothing about them is sincere. They probably dislike you greatly, but they'll pretend like they like you to your face to try and take advantage of you later. That's what these kind of people are like.
I think I've got a good theory here. I think in order to climb your way to the top, and I'm not saying this is a derogatory thing, it just seems to be a common trait. You have to have some traits of a sociopath to be a really big leader of things, like, for example, of really, really large companies. For example, even of the United States. You have to be somewhat sociopathic, or at least have sociopathic tendencies in order to withstand the pressure and also to be able to get in the right mindset to do it. I think that seems to be part of the requirements to be in a position like that, at least based on the people we've seen currently in those positions. They seem all to have that sort of mentality.
I would agree, and it's wild to see that in person though, because I never really knew what that would look like in person. And what is so interesting about that, just speaking about our personal experience with people who I would say have corporate personalities, is that they come off as very weird, like very, very weird. Like you'll sit there and you'll initially think, oh, they must be shy, kind of, but no, they're sizing you up the whole time they're dealing with you. And so you try and figure out, like, maybe, like, because I'm a very extroverted person, Matthew can attest to that. I usually go out of my way to try and make shy people my friends, because, I sit there and kind of, like, I relate to that a little bit, although I'm not shy. I'm like, oh, man, they probably, like, they want friends, but they're probably too shy to have friends. I'll try and, like warm them up so that way they'll be my friend. That's largely how I try and go about it with shy people. So eventually I am able to make shy people friends. But they act weird and they never stop acting weird. And eventually at the start I was like, "Oh, these people are just kind of weird and they're really quiet and they always look a certain way at you because they're shy, I guess." But over time, as normal people would warm up, they don't warm up and they just keep acting that way. And it seems as though everything that they're saying to you is always carefully curated. And then there is also holes that eventually pop up because the whole thing's a lie. They're not telling you what they really are or what they believe in. The entire thing's a lie. So then you're eventually, oh, wait a minute, they said this the last time I was talking to them and now they're saying this. And, while they're very similar, there's a discrepancy that isn't adding up there. There's a logical fallacy. And so then you eventually notice more and more of those. Then you start to notice that some things don't really make too much sense at all. And then finally you start noticing these people are lying about everything that they are and what they're doing. And you don't want to be around them because they're just lying that much. And so eventually you just stop talking to them and they never talk to you again, like ever. Like they're like, actually, interestingly enough, they try and use you as a connection first, but they see that you're not usable as a connection, they cut you off. And in this particular
Sounds
instance,
oddly specific, like it's almost personal.
yeah, it is personal because this actually happened to us, Matthew. I was talking about those people.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about just in general.
No. In like these corporate people we ran into, they would act like they kind of like you, enough that you'd be like, I'm not really sure if they like me or not, kind of a deal. And then finally, one day they're like, we need to use this connection and see if it's going to be usable in the future. So they ask you for a favor. And in this particular instance, it was a massive favor. They wanted me to check their mail for a month. And also one thing that was very insulting about there was this whole thing about the way they acted, just to explain this. They acted like the only thing that mattered in the world was them, like they were real big hotshot go-getters, and they aren't. But anyways, so I'm in the middle of working one night, and I didn't explain this when it happened back in the day to all of y'all. I just ignored it and just went on with working that night. But in the middle of working, I got a text from one of them. They're like, "Hey, can you come over? It's a little urgent." So I thought, like, just to be honest with y'all, I thought that one of them had mishandled a firearm and maybe discharged it or something. And I was like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "Maybe this is a big deal." I was like, "Do you need me over there right now?" And they're like, "Yeah." So I go over there, and then three of them come walking out. And then they're like, "Hey, we need you to pick up the mail for us for an entire month. We're going to be gone for a month." And I was like, I'm doing my own stuff. This was about the time that we left on this channel for a week to go to California. I was like, I can't do that. I was like, like I've got my whole thing going on. Just contact the post office, tell them to hold your mail or something. And so after I said that and walked off, I was honestly livid because it's like I'm in the middle of working. They know that because they've asked about the YouTube channel in great length before. I'm working. They asked me to stop working and come over here and have me wait outside their house for like 10 minutes so that way they could ask me to come pick up their mail for a month. And I was like, that is just messed up. I was like, no. I was like, hell no. I was like, not only that, you took me out of work to come over here and ask this. They never talked to us again from that point forward. They saw that we weren't usable for favors, didn't even care to talk to us again. And I was like, that is a corporate personality person right there. From this point forward, that is like the prototype corporate personality that that I see, and a lot of these people in these top positions act just like they do. Like when you watch them, they have the same like body language, mannerisms, the way they talk. It's the exact same, and those people are just like the corporate folks we're talking about as the example. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Well, actually, we're on to the first question of the night because we've actually been rambling and yappaholican since the speech ended. But so we are on to the first question of this segment.
All right, and real quick, we have a poll to address. It says,
Oh.
should the enforcer have picked up the mail for 4 weeks? 52% said no, 48% said yes. I'm shocked it's actually almost evenly split. I thought it was crazy, personally. I was like, pick up the mail for 4 weeks while we're working full-time? What is it, crazy or something? No, but, that's just me. But, enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say no, because I don't think I explained, like, the particular instance. I haven't explained enough about these people. If y'all knew what was going on by this point, you would have said no as well, because things were already starting to go downhill because of how they were acting. And so that's why when I went over there, I was like, this is like an attempt to see if it's even worth bothering them to keep dealing with me. So I was like, hell no, I'm not picking up this mail. And also on top of that, we work practically all day most times, especially then. And I was like, I'm not taking time out of my day to come over here and pick up this mail. And on top of that, they wanted me to bring it into their house while they're gone. And considering the kind of standing that we had with them at that point, I was not comfortable with that at all. Because I was like, what if they sit there and set me up? Because there were some things that were happening before this where I was like, these people seem very suspicious. What if they're setting me up to call the police on me and say that I broke and entered into their house? You know, that could be a possibility. I was like, I don't want to play around with any of that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm not doing that. Like, you know, it's like, I'm just not. But anyways, with
And
that,
somebody got it right. Stealth Assassin said, it's a power move they tried to do. That's what I said. I said that was like a move to let you know, like to try to put you in your place or something like that, to let you know that they think that they're more important or something. There's nothing wrong with asking favors of people if they're reasonable. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, for example, it's like, oh, can you go get my mail today? I've got to be gone for a day. It's like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, you go grab it or whatever. But if it's like, go get my mail for a month and bring it in this place, put it in this box, put it here while you're working full time, and also you've got your own life going on. That's a little bit different. That's like basically getting somebody to be your personal servant for free, which is crazy. So,
yeah.
you know, to me, I always think there was some like ulterior motive behind it when they did that. Those people you're talking about, I always thought there was probably some reason they did it. So I would say, you know, it was coming.
Also, another thing I want to say is that they wanted me to get the mail out of their mailbox at the front of their house and take it into their house. Tampering, because I'm not the owner of that mailbox, and I'm also not a resident of that house. Me reaching into that mailbox and opening it and taking that mail out is technically tampering with federal property, which is a felony offense. You can't mess with mailboxes like that. So I was like, you know, if at any point in the future they, you know, really did get on bad terms with me, they wanted to just screw with me, they could just say I tampered with their mailbox without permission. Because there was no text proof that they had ever asked me to do that for them. That's what they texted me and had me walk over there. And also another thing that really like pissed me off, I'll explain this just to give you all some more detail, is that when they texted, well, when the specific person over there texted me, I was like, sure, and I was thinking that there was an emergency, and I said, well, I'm coming over right now. And so they said, okay. So I walk over there, and they had me stand in front of their house for 10 minutes. And they knew I was already walking over. Said, oh, I'm walking over right now. I'll be there in like a minute or two. And so then they wait 10 minutes to come out. And they know I'm out there. Like I texted them. I sat there in the driveway for 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, 5, waiting for them to come out. I texted them, I'm out here. And then they said, okay, we're coming. And then it took them another 5 minutes to come out. I was like, what's up with this lag time and the delay? It's like, if this is this urgent for me to come over here right now, why the hell aren't y'all outside of your house right now? Waiting for me to come over here and tell me about this right away. And that was another thing. I was like, this seems like a power move to try and like make sure to let me know they don't wait on me, I wait on them kind of a deal. I was like, I've never dealt with this kind of crap before, but when they asked me to pick up their mail for a month, I was like, hell no. But that's the corporate personality kind of a thing that I just would avoid 100% from that point forward. There's a million other things I'm not telling y'all, millions of others, but I would not deal with that again. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so with that, we are now moving on to our Super Chat questions. We are moving on from the therapy session and also airing out the thing about sociopaths. But
Yeah.
we are now moving on to the first one here, which goes to none other than Duncan VR. And guess what? I'm about to be put through some therapy of my own, some animal noise therapy. And Duncan put in that $25 donation, and thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And before anybody says a word, because I know some people are about to say, what the hell is wrong with him? I'm reading a Super Chat, okay? It's a Super Chat. Duncan said, Baba Moo. Whoa, Jack, meow. Matt doing elephant chicken combo. I can't even do that, Duncan. I don't even know what an elephant sounds like, really, right off the top of my head. I do
Something like that.
Hey, noise. Oink. Don is good. Don is good. Ba ba ba. That sounds like a little bit of a chant there or something. Ask Putin for some vodka with oil. Putin said, talk to that fly, hot dog. Woof. Quack oink. The name is Matt. Hello.
And oh, hello there. And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is the traditional animal noises. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to bewilder new viewers with the animal noises, because nobody ever knows what that is or why we're doing it. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a massive thanks to you so much once again and helping this channel to keep on rolling.
And it does not matter if I say it's a super chat or not. Somebody will always say it. Somebody said, what the? I already explained it, man. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to none other than Gunfox, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support once again. And he said, the 2nd of December, 1988, STS-27 Space Shuttle Atlantis launch pad LC-39B landed at Edwards, heavy damage to the thermal protection system. It resulted in extreme heat damage to the right wing. March 23, 1965, Gemini 3 mission. Question from the chat.
And let's take a look at these missions. Gemini 3. Back in the day when I believe this was using an ICBM quite literally to launch people into space, if I remember the Gemini spacecraft properly. But also, the Gemini program was a very interesting one, I just got to say. Also, let's see here. So I guess, let me see. This was the one where they spacewalked, correct? Let me go see. Let's see. 2 American astronauts flew together in space. This is the first time. And they nicknamed the craft Molly Brown, after unsinkable Molly Brown. But let's see, it was the first U.S. mission. Let's see, it changed the size and shape, a key test of spacecraft maneuverability. Interesting. Didn't know about the specific Gemini mission, but very interesting nevertheless. And also, we have STS-27 right here. I gotta tell you, man, the space shuttles just always look cool when they were being launched. Like, nothing has the aura that the space shuttle had being launched. It just looks so cool.
It does look cool. Honestly, I like the booster because that big orange fuel canister right there, it makes it look as dangerous as it actually is. It looks like honestly kind of dangerous, like when they painted it orange like that in the center. It looked like a big ICBM the thing was basically riding on, which it kind of is to an extent. So yeah, I liked it though.
Well, you know what's interesting is that orange is actually the natural color of the materials that make up that booster. I believe on STS-1, the booster was actually painted. Yes, it was. It was painted white, like the actual solid boosters. But considering that the boost, well, the main booster tank there, is now never recovered. It just burns up in the atmosphere. They were like, why the hell are we spending all this money painting this thing white? So beyond STS-1, I believe all of them were not painted, and they were just in their raw orange color, which is kind of an interesting fact about the booster. But beyond that, still, let's see if we can look at that damage that was on. Let's see, clearly visible at touchdown. Oh, where's the... Oh, right here. Right along here. Dang, that is actually a decent amount. That's fairly interesting. A lot of damage, actually, to him. You see that, Matthew? There's some damage.
There's a lot of damage. The thermal tiles were, they were cooked to an extent, or they fell off or something.
Yeah, that's wild. Very interesting that you share that with us, Gunfox61. I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on writing and sharing these interesting facts with us. I believe the Atlantis Space Shuttle is actually at a museum at this point now, if I'm correct. Let me see. Oh, there's a partially melted plate on the underside. Man, that thing was cooking. But let's see what else we have here. Let's see. Can we find the page for the Atlantis? Here we go. Man, look at that picture in orbit in 2010. That's actually a really cool picture, man. That goes hard.
That actually blew my mind the first time I saw these cargo bay doors open, that this entire center of the space shuttle was empty. And remember, I was I don't know, 10 years old or something like that, so it was a little bit mysterious. But when it finally opened, I was like, what? There's nothing inside? I thought it was like fuel or something back there.
I actually thought it was too, and then I was like, "What the?" I was like, "What the?" And I was like, "There's no fuel." I was like, "This is a lie. I've been deceived as a child. I thought this whole thing was fuel for the boosters on the back of the space shuttle, and then it was just empty." But it actually is pretty cool because it's an internal payload bay that allows them to carry stuff into orbit. But moving on from that, let's see here. Dude, that's wild looking. That's actually super cool.
That's like that part in the Star Trek where Captain Kirk was about to drive the thing right into the sun or something like that, and then he veered off at the last second.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Man, crazy right there.
Yeah, I've got photographic memory too. It's just a little bit different.
Is a little bit different. There it is. The Atlantis has been saved. It's in a museum right now at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex.
I want to go see the Kennedy Space Center. That's one. We've seen Stennis, so we got to see that one. That was pretty cool. We've seen the Huntsville little space center. We need to see the Kennedy one.
I got to say, man, we will eventually see the Kennedy one. But the Atlantis space shuttle, like every other space shuttle, is a cool space shuttle, and one worthy of the pride of the United States of America. And so, with that, let's see, what was its last mission? 2011. STS-135. And it was the final mission of the space shuttle program, interestingly enough, was done by the Atlantis. So, let's see here. What was the mission? It was a space station resupply using the multi-purpose logistics module. The failed ammonia pump module that was replaced in August returned inside Atlantis payload bay. This was the final mission of Space Shuttle Atlantis and the last mission for the Space Shuttle program. It flew with a crew of 4 astronauts. The reduced crew size allowed for rescue by regularly scheduled Soyuz missions if necessary. So at this point, I'm guessing because of the reduced crew, the space shuttles were in such bad shape because of the lack of funding that they were scared that the space shuttle would not be operable to actually return back to the surface. And so if need be, they would just simply hop on a Soyuz and then probably jettison the shuttle and just allow it to go into a decay and then burn up in the Earth's atmosphere or something along those lines, I'm assuming. But
That's not too bad because, even with the private industry taking care of it, there's still astronauts stranded on the space station. So, it happens.
don't worry, we'll eventually get them. Like it says Boeing 3 years later. They're still up there. Man, they're going to be
Are they still up there, by the way, like literally right now?
I don't know, sadly. I don't know that one. I think they might be, but I'm not entirely sure.
Well, if they're still up there, I hope they get down from there because that's a tough place to be. And also, it seems like everybody's just sort of forgotten about them at this point because I haven't heard a word about it.
Man, I'm telling you what, it really does seem like that sometimes. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support, GunFox61, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And everybody's saying, yes, they're still there.
Dang.
Oh, well, damn, they're still there. I mean, if I was them, I'd be getting a little bit shook at this point because apparently nobody can really get them down. And I wouldn't put my faith in whoever's trying to get them down, to be perfectly honest. So, good luck to those guys.
Wait.
If they're watching the stream, good luck to you.
I have to correct something. Steven Gerrard said, difference between Apollo and the shuttle missions was Apollo never lost their crews. That is incorrect. Apollo 1, the first Apollo mission ever, all 3 of them died. Let me go pull that up because that was a part of the Apollo program. So technically, people did die in the Apollo program, but this is Apollo 1. And Apollo 1 was the first test ever, or crewed mission of the Apollo program, and it was going to be the first low Earth orbital test of the Apollo Command and Service Module. All 3 of these guys in this picture died before they even left the pad. The capsule caught on fire, killed all 3 of them. And let me go show y'all the after. Well, here's the burned exterior of the pod that they were in, and also here's the burned interior of the pod. So yes, all 3 of these guys died. It was literally the first mission of the Apollo program, and all 3 of them got killed. So technically, people did die in both the shuttle program and the Apollo programs at different points. But with that, I hope that does address that well and clear that because I wouldn't want people to think, oh, Apollo was better. It was a better time in America. No, people did die. Like people are always dying in space travel, much like any other form of travel. To be entirely honest, there's always a chance of death if you're inside of an object that is moving. But anyways.
Some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Said by everyone in history ever, man. Legitimately, that's said.
Including the guy on Shrek.
Yeah, including that guy who said it the most apt and descript way. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
But our next one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Hokey Redneck, for that support. Once again, massive support. And he said, will you talk about the ban or no? And yes, we've been talking about that. I assume TikTok ban is what you're referring to. So, yes, if you have any questions, we shall answer. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for the support, Hokey Redneck. And we have been talking about it. We actually talked about it in the middle of the Ukraine war segment. We have been talking about that TikTok ban because the clock talks out. And Lemon ate shit, apparently, today as well because that app also shut down. But yes, we have talked about it. I generally have to say it's a great thing. It's wonderful to hear that a Chinese Communist Party run and managed app was shut down today by act of Congress. I believe it's a great thing standing up for American and Western interests globally and also making sure that our citizenry are not poisoned by that wicked communist mind that exists within the heart of the CCP. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, one other thing, someone said, that isn't really run by the commies. Well, then why in the world did they not divest to an American company? Why in the world was it so crucial that they remain attached to their parent company, which is run and managed by the Chinese Communist Party? Because they were given an option. You see, you people who are saying that are listening to the propaganda, not me. They were given an option by Congress. They could either divest to an American company or they could shut down. The choice was yours. The choice is yours. And then they decided to shut down because it is a communist-run app. If it's not being run by communists, what the hell's the point of running running TikTok. That's the philosophy behind the decision that they made. And so they decided to shut it down instead of divesting to an American-run company. And so that's the reason why I'm saying it's great that they shut down. Because if they had actually divested to an American company, it would have been like, oh, well, maybe this was an overkill. Maybe they really weren't run by the Chinese Communist Party, because it doesn't really matter who's running them. They're still up and running and trying to find a way to do that. But no, when they were told they had to break away from their Chinese Communist parent company and then be owned by an American company, they said no and then decided to shut down. And that is 100% confirming that they were run and managed by communists, and specifically of the CCP. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And it looks like Rita Fuchs just threw in a massive support.
Whoa.
Dang! And so with that, get to it, man. Get to it.
So this one goes to Rita Fuchs, who puts in a massive $250 donation,
Dang.
the largest super chat of the night, and
Ole
huge thanks to you,
mole.
Rita Fuchs, for that support and helping to keep us running. Sadly, though, I do not see a comment attached to it. So guess what, Rita? I shall take a different topic in honor of your super chat, since there's nothing to address. And I just want to make a quick comment and tell you all. I don't know if y'all saw the Twitter post today coming out, but apparently there are active U.S. military members now jumping onto the Red Note app, which is, of course, related to the Communist Chinese Party. And now they're taking pictures of our aircraft carriers and posting it on China's app. Which is really stupid, and I have no idea why that's the case. And they're literally in their active duty uniform, they're standing on an aircraft carrier, and they're filming the aircraft and uploading it to China's platform, so that way they get free intelligence. Makes no sense at all. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, a warrant officer is about to walk up to those guys, magically appear inside of the hangar deck, and he's going to go, hey, buddy, that's really cool, that video you put on Red Note. I was wanting to talk to you below decks, down near the brig. Would you be okay with that? I want to hear more about these aircraft and the weapon systems that we have on board this carrier. Come with me. It's like I would say those specific sailors need to be because I believe it's sailors specifically that are doing this right now, need to be investigated and put in prison. I'm just kidding, not put in prison, but maybe possibly suffer some form of consequences for their poor decision-making skills. Because that sounds to me like possibly informing enemy, well, not really enemy forces, but adversaries of the United States about our carrier's specific weapons abilities while underway at sea, which is a national security risk and an operational security risk violation as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, but I believe that they should be investigated, as Angel Art said. I didn't say it that way. Angel Art said it that way. I'm just kidding. I stammered really badly. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, once again, big shout out to Rita for that $250 support.
I got to address that. I didn't even get a chance to address that, actually, crazily enough, Matthew. But I got to thank you so much for the massive support, Rita Fuchs. That is the largest support of the night. And I got to thank you so much once again for throwing that in and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so I got to thank you massively for that once again. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And that support is just insanely massive. We were incredibly appreciative and thankful for it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I just saw in the live chat from Anthony Harden, he said, Air Force here. He said, folks who are getting the Red Note app are having their security clearances taken away, FYI. Honestly, that's a very wise thing. If I was in charge, I would be doing that because anybody that does not have the discretion with a security clearance to go and download an app that is created in China, and every single app in China, by the way, has to abide by the Chinese surveillance laws, which means the CCP has a backdoor into their app. That's pretty much universal across the board. If someone here that's in the U.S. military does not have the discretion in their minds to know do not download an app like that while you have an active clearance, then they probably don't need to have that clearance. And in fact, they probably need to be watched to make sure that they're not probably lenient to things that are sort of not exactly American, because that kind of stuff can get out of hand if they start getting indoctrinated. So that's a good move in my opinion. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in?
I'd say that's a good move, a very prudent move. Also, I heard that recently in security screenings, they actually started asking people, Matthew, I kid you not, do you play War Thunder? Like, they are actually asking people that because of the amount of classified leaks that idiots have done, because they'll go on War Thunder and they'll go, this is ridiculous. The turret rotation rate on the M1 Abrams in this game isn't accurate. They made it 30 degrees. It's actually 33. And then everyone will go, yeah, sure, dude, whatever. And then they literally will just publish a PDF of the entire classified M1 Abrams manual to the War Thunder forums. And then War Thunder...
Also, Also, when they add that too, is I didn't see, I haven't heard from people that was on there, but when they add that.
Oh, it was dude. It happens all the time. Like I bet you if I pull up War Thunder right now, there will be some news somewhere. Wait a minute, hang on. What? Wait a minute. That's the. Oh, sorry. Here's the forum though. You can see this here. Boeing EA-18G Growler. They're saying, let's add it. And then someone down there will be like, well, I would only want to add it if they have this in the game. And then someone will go, why is that? And then they'll literally just publish the manual and be like, checkmate. And it's like, you just literally, like, violated every single security clearance that you had, like, to do this. It's like, this is crazy. But let's see. Let me go see if I can go pull up War Thunder classified leaks. They happen a lot on the forums. Not at all because of War Thunder, mind you, but because of goofy people. Let's see here. Wait, hang on. Let me go to the Steam community and go see if I can find the list of leaks. So, Challenger 2, the Leclerc, the Type 99, which is China's primary main battle tank, mind you, also had a classified document leak on the War Thunder forums. The M2 Bradley, the Eurocopter Tiger, the MiG-29, the F-15E, the F-16, the Shenyang J-8, which is still in Chinese service, by the way, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the F-117 Nighthawk, the AH-64 Apache, the DTC-10 125mm APFS-DS shell for the People's Liberation Army. So the Chinese have literally had their best armor-piercing shell, have all of its secrets unveiled to the public through the War Thunder forums. That actually happened. And let's see here. The DTW-125, which is also another Chinese APFSDS round, the BMP-3, the T-90M, and also a few other minor ones. But those are the ones that actually have had complete manual leaks happen, to where literally the entire classified manual of those vehicles was released to the public through the War Thunder forums from someone who actually had the manual and had the security clearance in one of those militaries to have access to it to publish it to the forums.
Or, even worse than the War Thunder leaks and stuff like that. I heard somewhere through the grapevine that one of these old days that some kid was printing out classified secrets on a printer and then uploading pictures of them to Discord. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was something like Thugs Shaker Central or something like that. But, oh my God, man. Like, it's just crazy. Like, when you see people that have a security clearance just throwing it all away like that.
I know.
And also, how young people can be that actually have security clearances now. Like, they give them out to anybody in the Air Force that's going into like an intel position or things like that. If you can pass the background check, you got it, and you can have it like at 19 or 20 years old, which is insane.
Yeah, it's wild how that works. But also, some people are talking about the leaks. Also, War Thunder is not from Russia. It actually is based in Hungary. That's something I want to clear up really quickly. Because a lot of people keep on saying, "Oh, War Thunder is Russian." Nah, it's in Hungary. And so it's not Russian at all. But anyways, let's see. Let me see here. What are some people saying? Please be careful to not accidentally disclose classified information. Oh no, we're not doing any of that. I never even saw any of the manuals. I just heard about it when it happened. I don't really roam around on forums. I just don't have enough time for that. But I would hear it when it would happen. People would be, "Oh, it happened again. Oh my God." I remember when it happened though on the Type 99, people were going crazy because War Thunder is actually accessible in China, mind y'all. I should share that info with y'all. It's one of the few games that actually makes it through the Great Firewall and is allowed to be played in China. And so the Chinese were playing the game, and the Chinese saw the Chinese tech tree in War Thunder, and the Type 99, which is China's main battle tank, because some people are like, "Oh my God, it's Russian run." If it was Russian run, they would make sure to let their people know, or at least tell people with classified clearances, "Hey, don't give info out on our stuff." But the Type 99, which is China's best tank that's currently in service right now, was misrepresented in the game somehow. I forgot how. I believe it was actually the armor values of the upper plate, which apparently War Thunder gets wrong on every tank, because that's usually why the documents are leaked on pretty much every single tank, is because they make the front plates weak for game balance reasons. But anyways, moving on from that, this Chinese guy in the People's Liberation Army, who's apparently a mechanic on this tank, that has the classified manual telling all of the details, the mechanical and spec details about the vehicle, said, "Oh, the front plate isn't strong enough." And then someone said, "Dude, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're just some, fat guy in a couch who doesn't know what the hell you're talking about." And so right after that, he literally published the entire classified manual for the Type 99 on the forum. The whole thing. It was in Chinese and everything. And so I'm guessing some people have the classified version of the manual out there now for the Type 99, and it's being spread around a little bit because it got put on the forums. So it's gotten Chinese vehicles. It's gotten Russian tech as well. Like even Russian stuff, classified manuals, has been published on the War Thunder forums. War Thunder is a bane to national security interests of every country worldwide because people can't help themselves but just publish classified documents for some reason when dealing with War Thunder. And I don't get it because like I understand that War Thunder is a realistic game because I play War Thunder, mind y'all. War Thunder is a realistic game, but it's not entirely realistic because they have to be able to balance the gameplay to where it's fun for everyone playing the game from country to country. So they're not going to make, and of course they don't know the classified details of these tanks either. So they're going to just, kind of guesswork it. And then these people want to get offended that it was guesswork. I don't even get it. And I don't get why in the world people act like War Thunder is a security risk, because really the honest truth is the people who are stupid enough to publish a classified manual are the people who really are the danger, not really the game. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it well. But Matthew, it sounded like you were about to say something there.
I was basically just going to say, what's that say about like the general like intelligence of not everybody that plays War Thunder, but if people on there that are actively playing it on that platform consistently are releasing classified information and making that stupid decision like that, I mean, does that say anything?
I mean, not really. I mean, I play War Thunder, and do I seem stupid? Oh, yeah. The answer is yes to that. But beyond.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't going to say yes. I mean, I wasn't going to.
Well, the answer is yes, and if you said anything else, you're lying. But beyond that, I would say it doesn't say it says much about some people who get classified security clearances, like those idiots who got paid 20 grand each to give classified secrets to the Chinese and the Navy. It's just stupid people like that. It doesn't really say a lot about War Thunder players. It says a lot about stupid people that get classified clearances. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to another one. This one is going to go to S Storm, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, S Storm, for that support. And it said, did the enforcer hire a particular singer to sing the national anthem with the orchestra in the intro?
No, that is actually from 1945. That version, it's from the very end of World War II, May 8th. So no, I did not hire anyone because that was made about 70-something years ago. We are actually making our own version of the national anthem to play from this point forward, to make sure that we, don't run into any troubles in the future with that kind of stuff. So it is in the works in the background, but I do not have a singer hired for that because simply the costs are pretty expensive to make music. To make that Armed Forces medley y'all hear in the intro, it cost about $5,500 from start to finish to make that happen. And that was for about 4 minutes and 30 seconds of music. So it costs about a little over $1,000 per minute of music. So it's a very expensive thing to be able to do. So for that reason, adding singers to it or choirs or anything like that adds exorbitantly to the cost. So for that reason, we have to make all of our music instrumentals. Otherwise, I most likely would go bankrupt trying to undertake those ventures. We don't even make money on it. Like there was generally a plan to fundraise for the next round of music beyond the Armed Forces medley, and then we didn't because I didn't really like the idea of doing that. So we don't even really make any money from doing this. We just do it to do it. So at the same time, while we want a high amount of quality, I also want to make sure that it's affordable and I don't go broke trying to produce more music. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that support. And let me do a quick read here. He put this one in earlier. He had a political science question, and let me see if I can read it. So let's see here. So I think this one might be okay. I'm not sure the enforcer would agree with it. Enforcer, do you want me to read it or do you want to check it?
Oh, let me check it. Let me check it really quickly.
I can answer this one without being political. That is an interesting question. Go ahead and read it, and I'll let you give an answer because that's actually a pretty interesting one. All right, so just a disclaimer up front, we are not getting into politics, and this question is meant to be not political, so please do not delve into it. But Andrew said, the number of judges on the Supreme Court is not stipulated in the U.S. Constitution, nor are there any qualifications necessary other than to be appointed by the sitting president, and should laws or amendments change this, LLT LSA. So I can't really weigh in on the last question there. Should laws or amendments change it? That would get a bit political, so we'll have to shy away from that one. But I would say about the qualifications, in my opinion, I would say that they probably should have to have a law degree to be a Supreme Court justice because that is the highest court in the land, and they should have a traditional legal education before taking that position. Because right now, anybody could literally be a Supreme Court justice with no training whatsoever, now, which is a little bit disturbing to me. But on the other question, sadly, I cannot touch it. I want to touch that question so bad, or answer the question. That sounds a little bit more better. But sadly, I can't touch it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that yes, there is that does exist in the Constitution. There is no stipulation of how many justices there should be. But one thing that also is kind of a counter to that, because everyone's always talking about how you can just pack a court, is that there's no way to get them out once they're there. You know, it's incredibly hard to be able to remove any Supreme Court justice, and that has to be done by the Congress through an impeachment, which is an incredibly long and drawn out process. And I don't believe that I don't believe really any Supreme Court justices have been impeached. Let me check that. Supreme Court justice impeached. Let's see. The only justice to be impeached was Associate Justice Samuel Chase in 1805. And they passed articles of impeachment against him. However, he was acquitted by the Senate. So no actual Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached. So in practice, it's practically impossible to remove them once they're in the Supreme Court. There really is no way. But beyond that, to answer the rest of that question, I'll be honest with you, I don't really think it matters whether there is a legal limit or not, because once again, they're not bound really to anything once they get in. They serve for life, and it's practically impossible to remove them unless you're able to get the entire Congress behind you on impeaching them. And considering that the Congress these days is pretty much split down the middle, it would be impossible to be able to get a majority big enough to do something like that. So once these people are in there, they're there for good. So it doesn't matter whether you have 9 of them like we have right now, or another odd number like 27 of them in the future. Because they're really not bound to anything. They're not bound to re-elections. They're not bound to pleasing the president or the Congress. They can really do whatever they want. I honestly also would say I have to disagree a little bit with Matthew on the idea of having them have a legal degree. I don't really believe that they should have to have a legal degree. I think it is fine that, of course, with reason, that anyone could be selected for the Supreme Court. I'm not talking about, like, Larry the Cable Guy becomes the Supreme Court justice or something like that. I'm talking more so.
What's wrong with that?
Well, hey, boy, I don't think he might get a good choice. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, someone intelligent and reasonably minded should be picked for a justice of the Supreme Court. But at the same time, I don't believe that someone someone only with a legal degree could be qualified to be the Supreme Court justice, because the laws of the land at the end of the day were supposed to be understandable and reasonable to an average person. I don't believe that you have to have some sort of a doctoral level of education to be able to say whether something is reasonable or not in this country, or what the civil impact may be. You really just have to be a reasonable, intelligent, level-headed person to be able to see what would make sense legally or what would be right morally. And so with that,
but one thing for sure, like, I don't know how many people listen to, like, Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments. Probably not a lot of people, because it's kind of boring to an extent. But you'll hear the justices asking the attorneys really, like, layman-style questions. Like, they'll literally just ask, like, they won't use any legalese at all. Like, usually in court, you'll hear, like, judges trying to sound all legal and stuff like that, trying to sound, technical, to try to, I don't know if they're trying to make themselves sound more intelligent or not, probably so. But the Supreme Court really doesn't work like that. It's almost like just having a living room conversation to an extent. Which is kind of weird, because that's the highest court in the land, and it's the least technical court in the land. It's just like people discussing something like on a political debate team or something. It's more political than it is legal in reality. Which I think if they were all, if it was a requirement to go to law school, I think most of them actually have a legal education. Actually, I don't think there's any on there that don't right now. But technically, you could put Larry the Cable Guy up there, and he would be qualified according to the current requirements.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing about that. The entire nation's legal system changed, but the Supreme Court didn't. because originally the entire legal system, if you ever go back and read about attorneys, or for example, Matthew, when we were in law school and they would take you back to those old cases from the late 1700s and the early 1800s, the court systems were just like the Supreme Court as it sits today. The entire legal system was like that across the entirety of the United States of America. There was no real legalese. There was no kinds of stupid tests, well, not stupid tests. Most of the tests actually make sense, but there was none of all of this over technicalities beyond. It was like, is it right or is it wrong? What does the law say about it? What do we think? That was how it worked, and it was an incredibly simple system. And not only was it simple, it was understandable to the public. You didn't have to have an insanely in-depth legal understanding of legalese, legal information, and all such things to be able to comprehend what the law was and why it made sense. And the Supreme Court never changed from that. And because it's the Supreme Court of the land, it's of the entire United States, so they have no reason to change. But every court below that started to change, and the lawyers started to change as the system started to evolve. I generally would say it's not bad that the Supreme Court's like that, because I think it is good that the public, the citizenry, should be able to understand the oral arguments being made, or really the questions that are put into play and the decisions that are made from a layman's perspective. I think that a layman's perspective should always be emphasized in legal institutions like that, so that way the public actually understands what it is, and it isn't almost in some form of a foreign language to your average citizen in the United States. I honestly would think that would be my standpoint on that.
All the legal stuff, like the way things are worded legally and stuff like that, were intended to actually confuse the average person. Did you know that?
The legalese? Yeah, I knew that.
Yes, it's actually designed so that way the attorneys and things like that would have their own language. So the regular person wouldn't understand it, and it creates an environment which the judges and attorneys speak in, and that the average person won't understand. So you have to get an attorney, or otherwise you're going to be screwed.
Yeah, I think it's a very unfair kind of a system like that, because that seems very... really, to be honest with y'all, it really seems un-American to me to do something like that, because it should be something that's understandable to the public. It should be something that they are able to get a grasp on. Because back in the day, just to let y'all know, there was so little legalese, you didn't even need to pass the bar exam to become an attorney. You just could be some person who got a grasp on the law, and then you could go into court and immediately become an attorney without any actual form of a bar license or anything like that. Nowadays, they've made it to where you have to go through the legal system, the legal education system. You have to spend an exorbitant amount of money to get into it. You have to learn how to talk like that. You have to talk like that, so that way you can make sure that you're pretty much able to game the system for the large part. I think that's largely unfair. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my personal opinion. And I know someone's about to be coming in here and be like, well, you didn't complete law school, so you can't have an opinion, because there's always someone like that. But look, none of our founding, here's something I always want to put out. None of our founding fathers had experience in every single category that they were deciding. None of them did. But they still came up with a legal system we have today, and everyone looks at them like they were some sort of revered heroes, when honestly they were just a bunch of random people, like there would be today, coming up with, how should a legal system work? I think it ought to work like this. Okay, and then they made it happen. George Washington had no experience beyond the military in any form of governance, none whatsoever, hardly any, and yet he became the first president of the United States. It's like that's just a little interesting to me, how people have completely different standards for the founding fathers versus today, and how you have to have done something. Like, you can't talk about prison unless you've been in prison. It's like that. What type of stupid modicum is that? And prisoners can't even, felons can't even vote. So it's like they can't even vote on these decisions. So who the hell's making decisions about the prisons? I guess no one. But anyways, with that, we are on. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just laughing.
But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here. Also, do y'all want some breaking news real quick? Do y'all want breaking news real quick?
Hit us with it.
So we're being told here, this is coming out of Israel, by the way, that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu orders the IDF that Gaza ceasefire, supposed to come into effect at 8:30 local time, will not begin until Hamas provides the list of the hostages expected to be released on Sunday, and that's according to Axios. So the deal is already starting to crumble before it's even taken effect, and it sounds like that could be the crux to actually have the whole thing fall apart. So, honestly, I thought the deal was unfair in the first place. I hope the hostages do get freed, but right now, We don't even know how many hostages are left alive. They could mostly be dead. We don't know right now. And that's what Netanyahu's causing a holdup about. And also, he's probably getting some backlash from his government over the unfair deal. So that's probably playing into it as well. But sounds like it's falling apart. Enforcer, would you like to weigh in?
That's fairly interesting here. I thought that was coming, and it had to have been coming around the corner with how things unfolded with that deal. But with that, Matthew, also, how many super chats do we have left? Just curious.
We have about 25.
Okay, so we are going to have to make sure to speed up from this point forward. I've just been yapping too much, man. I've been yapping way too much tonight. But anyways, with that,
Alex.
we make it look easy. Yap with your boys. Damn, son, where'd you yap this? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Eason, once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Eason, for supporting the channel Big League. And we appreciate that very much. And they said, if Putin goes down this road, he will likely fall out of a window sooner rather than later, and the oligarchs won't stand for it.
And I thank you for the support, but I generally would have to say, Ethan, I think it's the other way around. I think Putin really runs the oligarchs don't run him. He put a lot of those oligarchs where they are today, so he's pretty much in charge of them, because if he had the ability to put them there, he has the ability to take them out. The oligarchs didn't put Putin as the president of Russia, he put them as the oligarchs of Russia. So I think that in the end, while the oligarchs could try and band together and throw him out, they probably would have maybe the ability and power to do that, especially if they had the backing of the military and some of the public. I still think that the power disparity largely remains within Putin's camp. But still, thank you once again for the support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. But I do have a feeling that by the end of this all, Putin will not be in power in the Russian Federation. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Neil Visinot, who puts in the 20. And thank you very much, Neil, as well, for that very generous support. He said, what was that?
I said, hey! Go ahead.
But Neil said, what if NATO fights a defensive war only and don't go into Russia and not give Putin the excuse for nukes and take one from the chat?
They would still justify the use of nuclear weapons because their army gets pretty much practically destroyed by NATO. They're going to say that there's an existential threat to the Russian state because NATO has destroyed the military, and then they start tactically nuking people. They can always find a way to justify the defensive doctrine at that point to escalate the conflict. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I think it wants to give her support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. They said, stay safe for the next 4 years.
Well, I thank you for the support, and I thank you for wishing us well and good safety for the next 4 years. I have no idea why it'd be the next 4 years. I'm telling you. But you know something I gotta say? I can guarantee you this: I'm safe from getting a rug pulled out from under me for the next 4 years because I've avoided all the rug pulls so far, and that one ain't getting me either.
Hey, guess what? You want to invest in some meme stock?
It's not a meme. It's not a stock. It's not an actual.
It's not
investment.
a security.
It's not a security, but it is a security because the price could rapidly fluctuate up and down, and you got to be ready for that. But it's totally not a security. And by the way, we didn't write this terms of service or contract at all in any form of legalese. Screw you. Like that's like the whole thing and how it went. And man,
I do feel bad for those poor saps. Partially. But listen, folks, here's my thing, folks. I really do feel bad for the average person because, you know, some people are not familiar with the way that cryptocurrencies work. And generally speaking, I don't touch them, me personally. And I would consider myself mildly vetted in what they are, and also stocks as well. I don't really touch the cryptocurrency whatsoever. It's too volatile and it's too risky. But for the folks out there that think, oh, let me just listen to this person. They said go buy a cryptocurrency or buy a meme coin or whatever they call it now to get around the regulations, and they go buy it based on somebody's advice. That right there is despicable. Really, it's really despicable to see that. And I really hate when the average people will get crushed by that because they trusted someone. And hopefully everybody out there listening, most people already know this, but please do not just go buy something because somebody tells you to. Please do due diligence. And if you don't have any experience in it, then don't touch it. Because you're going to get crushed financially, and it's really unfortunate to see people getting crushed. Because there are people that get crushed in those meme coin situations. So I don't know. Like to me, I have like partial sympathy to it.
The meme coins. The only thing that's a funny joke about meme coins is how everyone gets rug pulled in them every time. I've never seen a single meme coin where everyone didn't get rug pulled in them. And right now there's a rug pull going on. If y'all don't know, it's probably one of the biggest ones ever yet. But there was the Hawk Tua coin, which is of course one of the biggest scandals and rug pulls of recent times. And then there's the new one. I can't even mention it. But I just got to be honest with y'all. never touch a meme coin. Never touch, I will promise you all this: the Enforcer channel will never come up with a meme coin on this channel, because it's going to be because the only way they exist is as a rug pull. It's largely a scam. So just don't touch them, because it's not good for you. It really will never end up well. So with that, I hope that does address that well. But I gotta say, that was one thing that was crazy to me. Matthew brought it up a little bit towards the end of last night's stream. I went and looked at it, and already today the rug's being pulled. Like, it happened that quick. So people are already losing a lot of what they put in at this point because the rug's being pulled. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hoagie Redneck once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And I saw you, Hoagie, in the live chat. He said, "These guys are the future of news." I appreciate that, and thank you very much for the kind words. He said, and also he said in the super chat right here, he said, "What are the Canadian clearance procedures?"
And I thank you so much for the support, Hoagie Redneck. And sadly, I do not know the Canadian clearance procedures. I know the American ones, because I've actually stood in and vouched for someone in one of those security clearances, security clearance screenings. But I don't know the policy in Canada. I assume it'd be fairly similar to America's, though. But with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Minok, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you very much, Minok, for that support. He said, "NATO would have to restore borders. But as we can see in Ukraine, that is a very hard thing to do. And not every NATO country will join. And I don't think France will join."
And I thank you for the support. And I would agree, it's going to be very hard to restore borders like that. But we can give it a shot, and hopefully it will turn out well. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next one here, this one is going to go to, let's see here, Bernard Rubin, who puts in a 10. And he said, "What up, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt?" And what up, Bernard? He said, "Just want to say that I'm riding on the high of successfully assembling the ergonomic chair." He said, "Anyway, take a thing from the live chat and just love Ukraine." And you know what, Bernard? You know what? You've gotten one half of the thing that the hot dog man's been grifting for. You got the chair.
No, he's gotten a third, because it's a desk and a chair and a trip to DC.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The trip to DC, I forgot. Needs that trip too. But thank you very much, Bernard, and enjoy the new chair. But Enforcer, what say you?
Aw, man, I gotta congratulate you. You got the chair. Now you have to get the desk and the trip to DC. And I want to take the trip to DC so that way I can go to this little building right here called the Cannon House building, so that way I can stand in front of my representative's door with some guy, an aide in the office who could be doing something better, and take pictures with them so that way I feel all big and important. Aw, man, I tell you what, aw, man.
You know he doesn't know what he's talking about when he takes a pic with the intern and says, "I met with the senator." It's like, dude, that's an intern. They go run coffee on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's like, oh my lord, you're harassing little high school and college aides like that are just trying to get a way into the government, and you're sitting here and harassing the shit out of them. It's like, I feel sorry for him, and I bet you it's horrendous to deal with him because he thinks so highly of himself. So he sits there and he'll say something like, I run a big media channel, and it's got like 300 active viewers. It's like, come on, man. It's like that's horrendous. I feel sorry for those people. I really do. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, and also great to hear that you were able to get yourself an ergonomic chair. We love to hear it. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here and make this thing possible right now. Also, the Library of Congress is absolutely bussin'. The architecture is immaculate. Look at this.
I like it, man. It looks expensive. It looks like the way we used to build buildings, and we don't do it anymore.
I think we should build them like this again. It's just truly a exhibit of the arts, and also architecture.
And today's construction money, this would be $1 trillion to build this with the upcharges.
Man, it really is wild to think that it actually kind of would be. It's like, man, it's just so nice. Like, it's just incredibly nice. Look at this. Like the marble, the accents. It's just amazing. I mean, it really is impressive. And I think the Library of Congress was built at the same time Union Station was built. And it's like, if they could build that in the 1910s, why the hell can't we build this kind of stuff now? I mean, we should be able to. But the answer is civil engineering degree. I don't know. I'm just trying to shoot for something right there. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Plexus Gaming, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Plexus. They said, why do I think of the movie The Mouse That Roared when I think of Russia?
Probably because it's a mouse that's roaring a little too much, and it's getting a little bit too bold and mighty, probably. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. That was a pretty good one. You got a laugh out of me. But with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and let me grab one more thing from the live chat real quick and copy and paste. There we go, quickly. Our next one here goes to Kenneth Bird, and thank you very much, Kenneth, for that $10 super chat. He said, y'all are on fire tonight, and great job as always.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words, and I hope that you enjoyed this whole stream tonight from start to finish. There's still 6,000 people here, crazily enough, and I gotta thank you all for being here right now. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bud. And Bud put in a 10. Thank you very much, Bud. He said the president of South Korea called for martial law because he claimed to have evidence that he was going to be overthrown. And then he literally gets overthrown. And could this have been a setup against him?
No. When you declare martial law with really no proof that you're about to be overthrown, and then the attempt at martial law and overthrowing the democratically elected National Assembly fails, and then they impeach you for that, and then they try you for trying to overthrow the government, that isn't exactly being overthrown. That's more so being an idiot and then suffering the consequences of it, in my opinion. Because that's literally what Park Chung-hee and Syngman Rhee did back in the day. I mean, it's literally the exact same thing. And they succeeded, but modern Korea is a very different kind of an animal. And he tried the same rule book and failed at it, and now he's going to suffer the consequences. So I'd say no. I would say that there really wasn't any kind of like a sinister plan behind it. It really was just the guy did something stupid, and now he's going to suffer the consequences for it. That would be my honest take from it. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. But always remember that a democratically elected leader should never be justified in overthrowing a democratically elected government because they may disagree with the direction of the democratically elected government. That is undemocratic, un-Western, and un-American at heart. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Clank Clank, I'm a Tank, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for supporting. And they said, with the Russian central bank talking of seizing funds over the equivalent of $13,300, and as of July 2024, the Russian enlistment bonuses were equivalent to $22,000, how many soldiers would desert?
Probably a good amount of them, if they're even getting that bonus. But I would assume that a decent amount of them probably are going to desert if that much of the bonus was just consumed by the Russian state or the bank, really. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eason, yet again, who puts in a 10. Thank you very much, Eason, once again, for believing the third support of the night. They said, it was only 1997 that Russia learned how to make modern toilet paper, and their whole infrastructure is hanging on by great Uncle Van Dyke, missiles included.
I gotta thank you so much for the support, and that is true. Russia just isn't that advanced. They can't even make toilet paper. Cope and see. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping us to keep this channel running. And Russia really is hanging on by a thread, especially now with the economic situation. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And we are on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Khan, LSA, who puts in a 10. Thank you very much, Khan, for that support as well. He said, hey, folks, and hey, Khan. He said, there are 10,000 people watching and only 34 thumbs up. Oh, no. There's quite a few now. It's like over 3,000. He said, but also smack the thumbs up. Give the enforcers a thumbs up. And thanks, guys, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we actually have gotten up to almost 3,100 likes. It's really impressive, actually. And we've had about 68,000 views tonight with 10.1 thousand people here at the peak. Really impressive numbers. I mean, it's really crazy. And I got to thank every single one of y'all for being here tonight. And I got to thank you for the support and really wanting to see that like number go up because, crazily enough, it has. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question goes to Doomsday Games. They said, have you guys heard that there's a U-2 spy plane in the UK? I hadn't heard that, but I did see a U-2 flying. I believe it was to Canada yesterday. It looked like a U-2 Dragon. What's that U-2 called?
Dragon Lady.
Yeah, the Dragon Lady. I saw one of those flying to Canada on flight radar, so I wasn't sure what it was doing. Maybe that's the one that went to the UK, maybe, but I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
Aren't they neat?
Yeah, that's the one that went up and spied on the balloon. It went back to work. It's crazy that they're still in service.
Yeah, it really is crazy. Honestly, it almost just looks like a really souped-up private jet or a glider, really. I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, that's at least how I look at them. But let's see here. there's a U2 at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford. Is that the one you're talking about? That might actually be the one.
The one in the museum? He's not talking about an active one?
I think he might be talking about the one in the museum. I actually did know that because the Imperial War Museum actually has a pretty impressive array of modern weaponry and different kinds of military technology that's in the museum. It's a really interesting place. Hopefully one day we can go there. But beyond that, oh, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Scary Powers. He's the guy who got shot down in one of these things. But still, I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again. Look, you can see the curvature of the Earth. Flat Earthers are seething right now. It's like they're angry at this. What the hell do you mean it's curved? That's a lie. They took the picture. They photoshopped it or something like that. It's pretty good Photoshop. If it is, it's not Photoshop. The Earth is round. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I think you want to give us support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jack. He said, tic-tac to Radnote to Laminate. And he said, out of the frying pan and into the deep fryers. And spelling mistakes because YouTube doesn't like those mentioned in super chats. Oh, really? Well, I didn't know that. But yeah, they're all gone. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support because they are all gone, like Matthew said. And so with that, thank you so much for giving support. I hope that does address that well. And all the French champagne, it is known for its excellence. But beyond that, with that, we are on to the next one.
I saw Paul Masson in the store the other day, by the way. I was like, hey, look, there's that stuff that you were talking about the other day. But there it is. I didn't get it,
Paul
though.
Masson? Wait a minute. It's actually still for sale?
Yeah, it was like some type of like bourbon, I think, or something like that.
No way. There is still Paul Masson products out there. They make, let's see, hang on. Let's see. Purchase a, so they don't make wine anymore. They moved on to brandy.
Brandy, that was it.
Yeah. They moved on to brandy, but they still make liquor. Some kind of alcohol. That's crazy because that guy, man. Dude, I've been getting a laugh out of the commercial for a while now. Like, the French champagne. It is known for its excellence. It's like he's just drunk as
Apparently
hell.
It wasn't. It went out of business.
Dude, like they said it was like cheap $1 wine. Like it was it was not good. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But still, thank you for the support and help with the channel to keep on running.
And our next one goes to Mass Wolf, who puts in a 10. And they said, thanks, guys, for keeping me going with the news. And thank you for watching. And if it wasn't for your channels, it would make my night stocking shelves that much longer and boring. And thanks for the company. And it must mean you're listening to it in some AirPods or something like that. So that's pretty cool. So you get to hear the audio, but I wonder if you get to see the video. But that would be pretty cool if you did. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta thank you for enjoying this channel while you're stocking shelves, because we are happy to know that we are able to accompany people while they're hard at work in this great country. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also Matthew, one thing, if humans said Earth is so much curved, it gets flat at the end. Man, I love how flat earthers will look at like Google Maps or something like this and be like, you see, down at the bottom of the Earth, they have a giant ice wall and it holds in all the water. It's like, it's just a flat representation of the globe. It's like, I can't believe how dumb flat earthers are. I'll be honest with y'all. And what's crazy is that most of them unironically actually believe it's not a joke for them. They truly do believe the Earth is flat, which is easily observable as not true. Just watch a ship go over the horizon. You can see it's round. I mean, you know, it's not something that's like hidden from you. It's like right there. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to W Sub C, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, W Sub C, for that support. They said, what model Geiger counter or other radiation detector do you own or recommend? And I'll say this, we actually have owned a couple of different Geiger counters for various reasons. Typically, I would like try to scan back in the day some packages that we were receiving from some fans, and we didn't actually know who was sending it, so I was a little bit sketched out. So once we found out, I scanned it and figured out there was nothing radioactive in it and opened it. But on this one, though, I would say I've had the Geiger counter that you can get from Amazon. I think it's like GQ Scientific or something like that, or GC Scientific. It worked pretty good, but it had a really slow reaction time, so you'd have to leave it sitting there for like 30 seconds to get a reading off of it that was accurate. If you want a really good Geiger counter, though, and you don't care about spending a good bit of cash, there is a company called Thermo Scientific, Thermo Scientific, I think it's called, and it's called the Rat Eye, and it's like a professional grade Geiger counter. And it's like instant readings off of it, but it's like $2,000, so you'd have to really have a purpose for it just to go buy something like that. But that's a pretty good one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I wouldn't really know a lot about Geiger counters, to be entirely honest with you, so Matthew's answer is probably way better than mine would be. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Peter Florence, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Peter, for that support. He said Russia is running out of 18-year-olds.
They're running out of everyone, honestly. It's just, there's a massive shortage there of people. It's odd how that happens, but still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is to go to Cachulian343. We have 3 in a row, 3 $5 super chats. Thank you very much, Cachulian, for that support. They said, you guys know that I've been in the chat crowing about World War III, being here for already a while now, and I've studied World War II for years, and I saw the pattern repeating on day one. And the problem is, MAD only works with rational, stable people, and Putin's not either one of those, and our best hope now is a rebellion or government revolt against him, and I would say that is definitely true. And also, it's too late to back down now, and losing is not an option. If this works once, tyrants will use it to conquer their way to the White House, victory or tyranny.
And I would agree with all of that. And I got to thank you so much for the support. And also another thing that I got to say, another thing I really have to say here is real important thing is that super chat was long. Like I'm trying to remember most of it. 1 second, let me. Oh dang, let's see here. Let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing the pattern as well. It's just that, these patterns have shown up before. It leads up to a World War-like scenario, but it can be avoided. In the past, it's been avoided a few times, but it appears this time we're getting closer and closer than ever to another World War. But with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Octavian Temerasanu, who puts in a 5. And he said, is it possible that Putin is looking to attack European NATO in anticipation of the change in leadership in the U.S., in effect, testing the U.S. resolve?
I do not believe so, because it's been made fairly clear by all sides the United States is going to be backing and supporting Ukraine, and that would also mean that they're going to be backing and supporting Europe most likely as well, in my opinion at least. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to W Sub C, who puts in a 5 once again and says, please rabbit hole on the World War II Eager Beaver air crew and their B-17. And I'm trying to understand the facts from the internet storytelling hype.
And I thank you so much for the support. Sadly, I won't really be able to go into it too much, but let's see here. Let's see. So one of the aircrew members got a Medal of Honor, and all of the other members of the aircrew received the Distinguished Service Cross. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'd be able to go into any more detail than that because the story seems to be pretty in-depth, at least according to the Wikipedia page that I'm reading at the moment, and unfortunately, I don't know the exact details of that story. And I haven't really been able to look into it because today we were busy running errands. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Plazoth, for that support and helping to keep us running. Also, a big shout out to Jose Aguera and Wavez Moralex for putting in a $2 donation. And huge shout out to Jose and Wavez for that support. And we also have a 5 from Lingering Catapult, who put in that 5 and said, you guys do a great job.
And thank you so much, Lingering Catapult, for saying we do a great job. And I thank you massively for supporting it and helping us to keep on doing a job. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hokey Redneck, who puts in a 20. He says, what are your current odds on World War III?
I would say the current odds of World War III are somewhere probably around 15 to 20%. Still on the low end, but it's getting a lot closer to it happening at this point than it normally is. Usually I would say the chances are less than about 3% or 2%. But it's marginal usually. It's still on the very low end, but it's getting to where it looks as though it might actually be coming up or coming around to happening. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support, Hokey Redneck, and helping this channel to keep on running because you are one of the Hokey Rednecks that makes this channel possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Ryan Flippo, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Ryan, as well, for that support. And he says, Enforcer Matt, do y'all think that the move Oh, goodness gracious. We can't touch this one, right? I
Oh,
can't touch it because YouTube will not like it. I would discuss it, and of course, we do discuss pretty much everything, but we can't discuss that because of some YouTube
oh,
restrictions,
oh,
sadly. But
oh, oh, that would get us killed. YouTube would literally,
it would.
you,
They would
you,
come down on us hard. But I
uh,
will say this. I will say this indirectly, though. It sounds like something is brewing up in the background with a little bit of a whirly bird or something like that. I don't know if y'all are hearing that, but something's brewing up, but we can't get into it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for the support. I hope you understand we can't touch that with a 10-foot barge pole if we want to be here on YouTube tomorrow. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And big thanks, Andrew, for that support as well. He said, should any governmental position be appointed until death, like the Supreme Court?
Yes, I think they should. Because the Supreme Court is not supposed to be subject to any kind of ebbs and flows of society. It is supposed to be a regulatory body. It's not supposed to be affected by elections. It's not supposed to be affected by partisan affiliation. It is supposed to be a non-moving, largely steady kind of a decision maker, or really not really a decision maker, but more so of an objective body that's supposed to look at what the Congress and the office of the president does, which is subject to the ebb and flow of society, and decide whether that's right or not. A lot of people don't understand, but originally senators were not elected in the United States. They were appointed by the governors of the states that they're from. So every single state would have 2 senators, and every single state governor, when elected, would be able to pick their 2 senators that they wanted to appoint, and they would serve for 6-year tenors. So if you were the governor during the time that that 6-year tenor in your state was up, you would be able to replace those senators or keep them where they were. And the Senate was originally designed a lot like the House of Lords in the British Parliament to be a regulatory body to the House of Representatives. Nowadays, it really isn't. It's really just a second form of the House of Representatives, because everyone in the Senate is, much like the House of Representatives, constantly having to vie in the public for re-election to the public. And I think it was actually, honestly, a little bit better when the Senate was a regulatory body and was appointed by the governors, because, you know, the citizenry elected their governors. So in a sense, you're really just electing the governors and then your senators all in one fell swoop. And on top of that, the other thing is that it added a second level of regulation, because democracy is good, but when you have democracy at every level and it's subject to societal ebb and flow, you pretty much have a dictator in the form of the mob that is running things. It's good to have regulation, and I think it's great that the Supreme Court has pretty much a life service for the people who are picked there, because they don't ever have to worry about re-election or pleasing the right people. Once they're there, they just get to really decide, in their opinion, what is best for the country and not. You know, whether that works well in opinion or whether y'all like the Supreme Court now or not doesn't really matter, because y'all would like it maybe 8 years from now or 10 years from now or 40 years ago. And that's just like any other part of life. You can like it or you can hate it, and then you can like it later because it's changed a little bit. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But I think that might be a bit of a hot take, is that I actually would wish that a congressional amendment could be made to strike down the amendment that made it to where the citizenry elects the senators instead of the senators being appointed by the governors. Because I also feel like that really gave the states a lot more of a say, because instead of the federal government completely detaching itself almost from the states to where everything is elected on the federal level and nothing has any pertainment to the states were able to pick their own senators and then send them forward. So they actually represented the interest of the state government, because if they didn't represent the interest of the state government, well, the next governor or that current governor could just remove them and have them replaced. And so I think that was a much better way of doing things, in my honest opinion, than what we see right now. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, BOFH said, what about age limits instead of term limits? Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they should
totally.
have that, because, you know, you don't know if people are losing mental faculties or not. And obviously, when some people get older, they start losing their mental faculties. Like, for example, their memory gets bad, start getting, you know, some forms of dementia. It can happen. So to say, let's just let somebody sit there until they die while their brain starts going, you know, bad, that's probably not a wise thing to do, because they're sitting in a very important spot. So that should be something. That seems like a pretty common sense approach. I would agree with it. But jumping on here to our next super chat, this one goes to Shannon Newman, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Shannon, for that support. And he said, Baraktar.
Baraktar. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to be from our live chats. We're jumping right into it. Our Morse code decoders of the night, and we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Brenew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Royal Fluffiness, Arabella Garbo, and Joni Dog. They said the LSA Morse code decipher says we must prepare for the worst and be ready to face the Russians if need be. And LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all hit that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I congratulate y'all for getting that correct, because y'all get that right time and time again, and it really is impressive. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the last questions of the night, the live chat segment. Due to time constraints and the stream being 3 hours and 40 minutes long, we're going to be gathering 3 live chats and then rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, so this one is going to go to, let's see here. This one's going to go to Plexus Gaming, who says, do you have any news about the threats directed at DC? And I've been hearing some very disturbing reports. I will tell you that me personally, I've been scanning around and looking at that. I've been following that news today. There's a lot of indications that seem to suggest that maybe there is a security threat of some sort. It looks like the inauguration was moved inside, and it sounds like it might have been even canceled inside the rotunda. So I'm not really sure what's going on right now. It looks like they're expanding the security perimeter to encompass a lot more of DC than previously known, and it sounded like maybe only Congress could actually attend the actual inauguration ceremony itself. And also there's anti-drone devices being added to Secret Service vehicles that were not there before. They usually have that electronic warfare device in the convoy, but it looks like they've added it to several more vehicles within the convoy. So I'm really not sure what's going on with that. It sounds to me like there's more of a little bit more than a weather issue, probably more likely a security issue. But Enforcer, what say you?
It sounds a bit like a security issue to me, but I haven't really looked into it too much. All I was joking with today with Matthew, I was like, well, it sounds like luckily I have something to do on Monday, because it sounds like there won't even really be a public inauguration. It sounds like it may just be done kind of quietly, privately, and then business is done. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least from what I know. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to, let's see here. This one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who says, who would benefit from possible conventional front line by Baltic states border?
No one would really benefit. The Russians would benefit at least at the start, but we would be able to turn the situation around with a couple of weeks, most likely. And we would be able to stabilize the front and then begin counteroffensives to push them back towards the border and most likely into Russia. So really it wouldn't benefit anyone. But we would eventually overpower them in the end, though, because in the end, the Western world will be able to win out against the Russian Federation, simply because we have superior firepower and we also have more adept technology that would be able to target them and destroy them at a far greater rate than they could us. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Chill Charity, who said, what would it take for the USA to strike first in a nuclear exchange?
Well, actually, we don't have anything like that. Like, the only reason we would strike someone first in a nuclear exchange, according to our modern nuclear doctrine, is if someone has somehow made it onto the mainland of the United States of America and is actively invading the U.S. and is seeking to pretty much destroy the United States as an existing country. That is really the only point in our defensive doctrine where we could nuke someone first. There is no preemptive strike policy that we have in our nuclear doctrine. It's solely defensive. So someone would actually have to be threatening the existence of the United States itself, possibly through a ground invasion, for us to actually justify using a nuclear weapon on someone. So generally, that would be the only situation we could. Beyond that, there's no situation where we could just nuke the Russians right now today, because our nuclear doctrine is defensive solely, and the Russians' nuclear doctrine is also defensive solely for the large part. There is a small caveat to that. But still, generally, you have to threaten the existence of the other country for them to be able to nuke you. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And what a night has been. Crazily enough, 5,500 people are still here right now, which is blowing me away. Usually we don't have this many people here at the end of a stream. But I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. Y'all have actually made it to the end of the stream, 3 hours and 40 minutes in. I got to thank all 10,100 people who were here at the peak tonight watching the stream. stream. And I also have to give a massive thanks to the exactly 70,000 people who have watched the stream at this point as I'm talking right now. We are entirely honored and appreciative to know that each and every single one of y'all find this channel to be your primary source of news every single night we go live on air. And of course, we are entirely honored and appreciative of all of you enjoying this channel and wanting to, of course, see the news here every day. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Right now, we are, interestingly enough, at 336,010 subscribers. So we just made it over 336,000 today. So if you want to subscribe, you will guaranteed be in the 336,000 people that make up the Enforcer channel and the Lee Spring Army. But with that, we will see you all tomorrow to run the Sunday night fundraiser at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, the Lee Spring Army shall never die. And with that, of course, be sure to join us tomorrow at midday for the short war video, as always. And I think tomorrow is my day for the short war video, I think.
Yes.
So, yes, it is. So if there's news to cover tomorrow, you will be hearing from me midday on the short war video. So be sure to join me for that. And also, of course, tomorrow is the Sunday night fundraiser stream. Not really sure what the fundraiser is that we're doing tomorrow, but we will be picking that one and making it a very juicy one. So be sure to join us again tomorrow for the fundraiser stream. And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream tonight and all the 70,000 people that joined us. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, get some rest, and good night.